Also do so via 0550-585832, 0550-585832. That is those are our WhatsApp lines. Let me say now, for those of you who want to reach us on Twitter, you can reach us on the station's handle at Citi 973, at Citi 973. The hashtag is the big issue. You can also reach me on my own Twitter handle at East Sportsman, Godfred Akoto Boafo at East Sportsman, on the same hashtag, the big issue. I also ask that you keep the comments without the insults. Let's be civil towards one another, and we will all be happy. We're also streaming on Facebook on the Citi TV and the 97.3 Citi FM Facebook pages, so you can also watch us there. And do share if you are watching. You can also leave your comments on the comments thread there, and we will gladly get to them and read. And if you do miss the live broadcast, don't worry, you can go to our YouTube channel, Citi Tube, CITITUBE, Citi Tube, and you can watch a playback of this show as well as other programs that you have missed. So we have the comprehensive package all for you, one way or the other. Okay, so let's begin the conversation, and then I will introduce my guest. We'll be doing the show in two parts. The first part is the political side, where I'll be dealing with politicians. The second part is the public health side, where I'll be dealing with public health experts. So today, very clear separation of these matters. Okay. So the week started in the Volta region, where the minority in parliament demanded the withdrawal of military personnel deployed across Ghana's eastern borders. Now, they were worried by the presence of soldiers around the Ketu South, Aplao area. And Fifi Kwete addressed a press conference on behalf of the minority. Now, after he did that, the government, it was about just 10 minutes after they did so, the government with the information minister and the defense minister also organized a press conference to clarify the concerns raised by the minority and explain why they had deployed soldiers across borders in the country. So we'll listen to Fifi Kwete, and then we'll listen to Dominic Nitiwol. We'll come in-house and begin the conversation on the big issue.
The Minority Caucus began their schedule of activities with a press briefing at Aplao, which was addressed by Ketu South MP Fifi Kwete. He called on his constituents and the persons in the region to come out in their numbers to register.
The issue about whether we are not inflaming passions when we raise some of the issues we have raised. I was going to say that it's almost appearing like telling the relatives of George Floyd and the blacks, not just in America but all over the world, who have had knees on their neck from time immemorial, and who are screaming, "We can't breathe," and telling them that when they shout, "We can't breathe," they're actually inflaming racial passions. The others can't breathe. Other lives matter. So this is simply a call for justice, a call for the nation to understand our solidarity, that together, like rainbows, we make this country great. And every man stood on the independence podium in the form of Dr. Agbeni Belema, which means our contribution right from the very beginning of this country has been absolutely concrete.
Chairman of the Volta Caucus, Emmanuel Bejra, issued an ultimatum to government to recall the security personnel. After the briefing, the MPs visited the palace of the paramount chief of the Aplao traditional area, Togbe Amenya Fiti. There were concerns about the treatment of residents of the area by the security persons deployed there. The team then visited the Akanu border to ascertain the extent to which persons are being molested at the border. Later, the team caught up with the MCE of the municipality, who responded to some of the issues raised.
The EC is ready, and the police and the customs officer, the security officers, they are all ready for tomorrow's exercise, and So far, I don't think there's any problem. We cannot stay here for foreigners to come and decide who becomes president for us. I will make sure that anybody who is not Ghanaian shouldn't come to get enough to register. But though that's the work of the security agencies to do.
About 1,000 security personnel have been deployed across the country to help secure both approved and non-approved routes following the closure of Ghana's borders. The joint team comprises 384 military personnel, 172 officers from the Ghana Immigration Service. The rest are 269 personnel of the Ghana Police Service and 70 Ghana Revenue Authority officials. The Ministry of Defense said the first batch of troops was deployed in February 2019 to the northern, Savannah, northeast, as well as the Upper West and Upper East regions on the operation code-named Operation Conquered Fist. In March and April 2020, more security personnel were deployed to enforce COVID-19 restrictions. According to the Minister for Defense, Dominic Nitiwu, the final deployment was done on the 18th and 19th of June 2020 with the sole aim of maintaining strict compliance with the border closure. He therefore called on Ghanaians to disregard moves by the opposition NDC to politicize the exercise.
I want to let the chiefs and people of the Volta region know that the information the NDC minority, former President John Mahama is feeding them is pure propaganda. It should be ignored. It's pure mischief. It's pure propaganda. We have deployed across the entire country, and the purpose is to aid and support the Ghana Immigration Service to stop people from crossing, because we have too many unapproved routes. And COVID, the numbers are getting higher and higher and higher.
He assured chiefs of the affected areas, especially Ketu South in the Volta region, that reports of brutalities will be duly investigated and culprits punished.
As for the searching of home, that is not the mandate of the soldiers. So I will investigate that report that they have said. They are chiefs. So I'm not able to say that it's not true or it's a lie. No. They are chiefs. So I will investigate. That's not their mandate. And I'll be very, very surprised that any soldier will do such a thing. It's not their mandate. Unless somebody has committed a crime and ran to a home and the soldiers have been tasked to go and retrieve and get that thief or that criminal. Otherwise, it's not their duty and they will not do that. But I will investigate it.
Responding to some alleged ethnocentric comments made by MP for Adanse Asoka, Katie Hammond, the Minister for Information, Kojo Opon Kroma, had this to say.
I think we have to be very, very careful also in, for example, hearing from a member of parliament who is not a member of government expressing his suspicions about what he guesses is the reason for a particular exercise.
The Minister for Defense disagreed with some of the concerns raised by former President Jerry John Rawlings on the matter.
Some of the concerns, I agree with him when he says that we should deploy in a way that people will not be concerned. It's normal, and that's what we are doing. But I disagree when the statement says that we have not deployed in Volta region and Oti region. Please, we have deployed in Volta, we have deployed in Oti, we have deployed in Northern, we have deployed Upper East, we have deployed Upper West, we have deployed in Savannah, we have deployed in...
So that was Dominic Nitiwu, the Minister of Defense, clarifying why the deployments had been made. Now, the day after that, the voter registration exercise indeed did begin, and the exercise taking place involved 6,788 clusters made up of 5 registration centers each, and is to be organized over a period of 1 month. So it started on Tuesday, and today is Saturday now. It will be conducted in 5 phases, each phase spanning 6 days. Now, the process, according to the EC, has been generally smooth, although there have been concerns raised about the breach of social distancing protocol. So the political parties as well, who had been engaged in all kinds of disputes prior to the start of this particular exercise, also had their say. And we had Mr. Evans Nimakun, who is the Director of Research and Elections of the NPP, who spoke about how the NPP had observed the registration exercise in the first few days, as did Mr. Peter Otokuno, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, and he alleged that several challenges had indeed befallen the process.
I think day 1, day 2, what we've seen so far is encouraging. However, I'm not too surprised about the position of Mr. Peter Otokuno. This is a program they never supported. I'm surprised that as of now, I'm checking from our database, we are having almost 520,000 people for day 1 and 2, and we are still collating from the registration centers. I'm surprised that, this will be his initial comment. A program that is 38 days and you use only 2 days to create problems. I'm not surprised, but what we are picking is that yes, in some few places, the machine didn't work, and we've been told that they have backup to replace them. So wherever there were challenges, the EC is working to fix the problem. And for us, our agents are everywhere where registrations are ongoing, and we expect that they report back to us. We'll still wait and see how the phase 1 will go.
Essentially, the process has been generally unsatisfactory, and it's rightly so, because we expected that it would be unsatisfactory because of the ill preparedness of the Electoral Commission. From the day 1, we knew that we were going to go into this crisis. As we speak, according to the plan of the Electoral Commission, we were supposed to have about 6,700 centers to start with. Now we are doing some little over 3,300. So that tells you that it will have its own inherent, challenges. The equipment, those who are using it for the first time. They have not been exposed to the system. So there would be a lot of challenges with data entry and even the output. We have picked reports, widespread reports of, system malfunction and network challenges, which, is making it very difficult for some areas to meet the numbers.
This is one of the registration centers in the Ashie-Duketeke district within the Ododo-Diodio constituency. In your short 2 queues. Now the one on my right is for the elderly. The one on my left, those below 60 years. Now, the registrants here are frustrated. For the elderly, some of them said they've been here as early as 4 a.m. and it's almost 1 p.m. and no one is telling them why the exercise hasn't started. Now, on my left are those below the age of 60. We'll try and find out what their peculiar challenges are. But one of the issues officials here are confronted with is the fact that most of them are not observing the social distance protocol. And some of them too are not wearing their masks. And we'll try and speak to some of them now and then find out what their peculiar issues are. Time here now, Ba.
I'm back at 5 o'clock.
Now, Ba, and Temsa.
Abani here, Mintia. Card and so hear me. Tina Mammy Bahantam. I have a hatcha, so sir. I do not almost starting. To me, what the current almost starting.
We are catching Sherman into almost that.
Paper chai. Any agent, and I can't almost see a salano. And yes, dear Henny, of course, see a bay man, you say in your menu. You're heading a me.
Now the passports in the bar has over registered, and now the Ghana card.
The Ghana card.
Let's speak to another registrant. She has a concern. Why are you not observing the social distancing protocol?
Oh, social distancing. I'm no say coronavirus about. So the way to tell us society. And colonial can be more. It can be because I'm the hotel where Cramania, worms, with the hotel where Mania. It is about social distance. Shadia Tata Suye. I didn't so much say. About 2 minutes. Oh, say I live on some charge. And see a pair of Pamutomunian and Tamnian coffee and Kudi. Somunian and Tamnian and Kosha more fear. I had near fair, I near them, Tomunian and Tanian Koyajuma.
The delay, as we are being told by the NPP constituency chairman, is partly due to some disagreements or misunderstanding over the number of registration centres expected to be used for the exercise in this district.
We realize that the Electoral Commission is losing centres different from the gazetted ones. Yesterday, my people pushed at the DAPAC meeting that the gazetted one should be used. But I think it was not agreed. So we petitioned the UC chairperson and all the stakeholders involved. And this morning, the UC officer called for a meeting, which the UC is the security agency, also and the various political parties within the constituency. And we have all agreed that if something has been gazetted, it has become law. So you can't do contrary to something that is law. So even if the UC is having a challenge and it's not going to open all the 38 centers gazetted in the first place, then it will select the 90 that it's going to do from the gazetted ones and go and start. So that is the conclusion that we take. So now they've agreed and they've mentioned the 19 that they are going to do this morning from the gazetted one. And I think that is enough for us.
For some of the people who've come here to register, the issue is not the fact that officials have delayed the registration exercise. For some of them, they will not be able to participate in today's registration exercise. They are being told to come on Thursday to have this done. They'll be speaking to us to tell us what they make of this arrangement.
Papa Lando, you are carrying Majasian so now, remember. They were to lie. What to lie, Majesha, what yes, you want to what about trash? I can't why I did so do about video. Kaja Manke, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, neighbor. I cannot go. I what touch you? I actually 1 o'clock, they don't watch you. At 3:50. Banya Konika Jalebi. Up to now, at 1 o'clock. I can't 1 o'clock. I can't so that in back home. Miss Waka Mafia ID card. I can Ghana. Every day, Kaba vote. Every year, my vote. I can Ghana Shikoneno. Miss Waka my vote. In Bayono Papa. In 3 o'clock. In Wardron. Ninka up to now, Yakoni. Katia Hamia, Bema was stage here. Ma was stage, I got the James Star, be and vote to a shallow, be and vote to a be and vote to a I found the okay. Yeah, Katia Hamia, and you can Gamma. Katia Hawa, very few have for Ghana. Jamoko will have a beer. Let's pay a beer from here. She ain't chocolate. If you are so, if you are a beer. But there tomorrow for me. Market 4 in Tashi. Damuka came across Tobiani. She can't hear your fan. She can't hear your fan. More in Tashi.
One of the challenges officials here are faced with is that the registrants coming in here are not observing the social distancing protocol. So for the policemen are getting them to do that. In your short, one of the policemen there pushing some of the registrants away to ensure that there is space. Even though the registration exercise is yet to start, officials here have put in place the necessary safety measures to ensure that registrants are protected as much as possible. There's a Veronica bucket there where you can wash your hands. There are health officials here who will be taking the temperature of the registrant. You also have security personnel there in your short who will be ensuring that nothing untoward happens here. The exercise is yet to start here. We don't understand why it hasn't started hours after the center was opened. In your shot, you have officials waiting to be deployed to the other registration centers. The bags in here contain the registration materials yet to be deployed to the other registration centers. Officials getting ready to deploy the materials to the other registration centers in this district.
Bring your machines, bring the machines. Yeah, car. All right, so bring this one. The machine. Offer, climb. Asa, one. No. Go to the station. Only one person can remain. The rest go to the station. Go to the place. We have to put equipment inside. Walk. We can walk to the place. Before the traffic light. Right? To your right side. That's it. So you go. You meet them there.
The deployments of registration materials ongoing. In your short, another car moving out of the premises to one of the registration centers. After several hours of delay, the registration exercise is about to start. But before the registrants come in, this will be their first point of call. They would have to have their temperature taken before they can proceed there and take and wash their hands. It's 12:37 and one person has started the exercise. We know that it should take approximately 10 minutes for you to go through the process and get your ID card issued to you. We'll try and speak to the first registrant to tell us how the whole process was. After several hours of waiting, Mr. Mohammed Nyako has been able to go through the exercise. We'll be speaking to him to find out how he feels being the first person to be issued a card. Katrin, how you feel going through this exercise? Tell us about the experience.
So correct.
What do you see in Krata now they buy out the register all the passports and buy now the Ghana card. This is the Jamestown Mancha Palace, one of the registration centers in the Ashiedu Keteke district. On the compound itself, authorities are doing everything they can to ensure that the social distancing protocol is observed, but the same thing cannot be said for what is happening outside now. Outside there, most of the registrants are not observing the social distancing protocol. So just like what we saw at the City Engineers Registration Center, we're also learning that...
Okay, so that was a report on how some of the registrants experienced the voter registration exercise, at least in the first 2 days of it. Now, I must also indicate that the EC on a daily basis has been adjusting and updating the procedures for carrying out this particular exercise based on situations. So, for instance, you would recall that 2 days before in the Upper West region, for instance, final year students had raised issues about their inability to register because of the COVID protocols that did not allow them to leave schools. And there was a concern because there are quite a significant number of final year students who have gone back to school and cannot take part because they cannot leave. Well, yesterday the EC did respond and say they are going to create a special registration exercise for those final year students as well as prisoners. Well, they've also issued a statement that deals with some of the concerns that have been raised on social distancing protocols and generally the lack of understanding of what is supposed to happen at the registration center. So I'll quickly go through one of the updates as well before I come in studio and introduce my guests to you. So this one says, for immediate release updates on the voters registration exercise. The Electoral Commission has taken note of a number of issues with the ongoing registration exercise, which constitute electoral offences under the Commission's laws. These include 1, the presence of non-accredited persons at some registration centers. And I'll be asking my panelists, because 2 of them are persons who have gone through several elections, to explain why this particular issue has come up. The presence of non-accredited persons at some registration centers. 2, attempts by some applicants to register at different centers other than where they reside. Illegal possession and distribution of the Commission's forms. Defacing of posters and movement plans of the Commission posted at the registration centers. The Commission wishes to remind the public that only persons with accreditation are allowed to observe the process at the registration centers. All applicants are expected to leave the registration centers after registering. All eligible applicants are required to wait for the registration team to get to their respective centers before attempting to register. Per law, an applicant can only register in a location where he or she resides or is ordinarily resident for not less than 12 months before registration. We wish to caution the public against defacing any poster or movement plan of the Commission. The above issues constitute offences under the electoral law and are punishable by the institution of a fine or term of imprisonment or both. We request that citizens desist from engaging in these acts. Additionally, contrary to the misinformation being circulated on social media, the Commission wishes to inform the general public that it has not closed any of its registration centers nationwide. We continue to remind all applicants to observe all the safety protocols instituted by the Commission, including the mandatory wearing of face masks and the adherence to social distancing at all centers. Signed by Mrs. Sylvia Ano, the Acting Director of Public Affairs of the Commission. So this is a quick update that has come from the Electoral Commission based on some of the issues that have arisen over the past 5 days since the registration process began. Okay, so let's come in studio, and for this part of the show, I'll be doing this with Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa. Franklin, good morning. And then we will also do this with Samuel George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram, and then Seth Kwame Achiampong, MP for Imprayeso constituency. He's also he's become a bit of a regular on our programs when he has the time. Always good to have him here. So I'll begin the conversation with Honorable Seth Kwame Achiampong, Member of Parliament for Imprayeso constituency. Honorable, good morning.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I am well, and I must say condolences. Your party this week lost its former General Secretary. Perhaps you might want to pass a few comments before we go.
Sure. Let me take the opportunity to say good morning to each and every person watching us and listening to us this morning. Moving forward, very much in a very sad mood since the demise of our former General Secretary. Sir John is unique. When our party decided to expand the administration, the frontiers of the party in terms of its structure, how we work, he was our first elected General Secretary. And that expansion election took place in Kumasi, and he emerged. And the emergence of Sir John in partisan political activity is history that everybody knows about here. And his persona, he's such an affable character. He loves to mentor people. He makes fun of people. He enjoys being made fun of and all that. And it is so painful that we're losing such a gentleman at this crucial moment in time through COVID. And this is my concern when it comes to COVID. And I pray that our good Lord, like we always say, will hold Sir John in his bosom till we meet again. And the entire family, it's very, very saddening. He'd lost the mom, he'd lost the sister. He had sent invitations to all of us, inviting us on the private burial. And then, unfortunately, the same person who was inviting us has also left us. This is how bad it looks. But God knows best. And so we will console ourselves with what we are always admonished through the scriptures. On that note, I want to thank you for the opportunity to also share my opinion and views in respect of the demise of our great son, Kojo Owusu Afriye, a lawyer by profession and a former General Secretary of our family, the political party, the New Patriotic Party.
All right. So let's get into the voter registration exercise. It was supposed to start on Tuesday, but on Monday, the NDC raised questions about the presence of soldiers along the Eastern Corridor borders, particularly on the Aflao and other parts of the Volta region. And per their assessment, it was to intimidate residents there to prevent them from registering and whatnot. What did you make of that particular situation and the subsequent explanation by the Defense Minister and the Minister of Information?
Typical of the times, I may say quite coincidental. The point is this, for over a year now, because I happen to be part of security management in terms of Parliament and in general as a country, I know we have patrols along our borders, and we've been doing same for over a year now. Especially, it started in the upper regions where we border Burkina Faso, and any person who is minded of the stability of the situation in Burkina Faso needs nothing to what I'm saying. And Côte d'Ivoire has also been experiencing things like that. We have a general problem in the Sahel, in ECOWAS, and these are matters that are discussed in security-wise. We as a country in 2016 agreed that we will strengthen our border patrol, and our border patrol agency is the Ghana Immigration Service. And by an act of Parliament, we said that because of the nature of our borders, we have authorized and unauthorized, approved and unapproved routes. So you look at our neighbors, all of them, their border patrol personnel are armed to the teeth. So we also took that decision, and fully it's been in operation now. Now, what threats we are experiencing and witnessing requires a defense force to back it up. So in these times, they decided to deploy them. Unfortunately, we as a country, the outset of this COVID, the history tells us that it's imported. And then we are in most of the cases that even in the Volta region, for instance, the first cases that reported were people who had come through unauthorized routes had come home, and this caused that some of these concerns. So we are in abnormal times, and it is proper that we keep the sanctity of the state intact, so that our security, for me, public safety is paramount. Unfortunately, this deployment, which was rolled out, coincided with COVID, and with the commencement of the voter registration exercise. And I knew certainly our competitors will use that to hit government hard. The government is trying to do something untoward.
I don't think the timing was something that would raise eyebrows.
But if it is necessary for us to deploy for the public safety of the country, I wouldn't say anything against that, because security is paramount. If we're not living in a very safe time, I can't be sitting here running my mouth. So public safety, security is key at any instance and at any time. So for me, I didn't see anything wrong with that. Certainly, in these times, yes, opposition will not shut up. Opposition will definitely be loudmouth, raise everything that they see, be it true or not, because they want to heighten the tension. And it's part of the strategy in winning an election. And it is onto us. Today, we're in the saddle, and we must ensure that the security of the state, the togetherness of this country is not toyed with. So for me, you can't say anything apart from what has been said.
And on the voter registration exercise as well, quite a few things were set before the process begun. From what you've seen over the past 4 or 5 days, what have you made of the EC and how it has implemented the voter registration exercise?
It's quite interesting. I expected that we will go through some of these challenges because it's a competition. And in a competition of this nature, we are all not expected to come with the same appreciation of whatever issues are being discussed. And our major competitors, the minority in Parliament and at large, the National Democratic Congress, had indicated that they were not in support of EC's exercise. And from the outset, every conversation which were raised based on information they had for us as NPP, we had also started similar conversations way before the outset of this even date. And so when EC brought the news, it situated most of our advocacy. And so we welcome that. And in a competition, I don't expect my competitor to like what I choose. And so these are some of the times. However, the cardinal principle is that we need to agree to disagree. And so for the interest of the state, if we don't agree on a matter, the procedures are there. We have advanced enough of such issues to the necessary quarters. We have come to the bottom of them, and we must make progress in respect of the conversation. So as we are here now, the most important thing for us to do is to look at how best we can work and get these registrations through for us. So, like I said earlier, in every competition, you cannot sit back and say people will fold their arms and watch you and not fully come with their strength to contest. Then there's no point bringing the competition to the fore. So it is expected. My biggest worry is about our own culture and how we perceive things.
What do you mean?
I come to us going to the polling stations to register. Typical of us, once an exercise breaks, there's sometimes a mad rush. Everybody wants to get themselves onto the register early. It is good to be responsible citizens, but we do that same in a very responsible manner. We are not in normal times, so we've all been admonished and advised that look at how you have arranged that. Hitherto, you have given us more panelists to sit around, but today you're observing what we call social distancing. I love to say physical distancing, and that is the way we must drum this home for it to situate in people's mind. Today, by courtesies of your own selves, I watch some clips and I wonder that in Ghana, July 4th, July 3rd, July 2nd, I love Citi a lot because I watch you guys, I love your analysis. Okay?
Thank you.
And your cameras capture people and they'll tell you who told you there's something called COVID. It won't attack us, it won't hurt us. So it tells me that our education has gotten nowhere. We have to deepen the education. So the people do not see why they cannot stand next to each other and walk to the registration center. The only places that from the outset people respected the protocols were when they had to go to interface directly with the EC's arrangement. But prior to, we don't want to comply. And that is my biggest worry. That is where our culture comes in. And so with this appreciation, it makes it a challenge for all of us to go down on ground and ensure that we arrange it and speak to our following and get people to understand. I don't think everybody watches Citi. Most do. But news, it is not everybody who carries good news. But I'm sure, and I must admit, sometimes shaken by the demise of great men and women of this country by this COVID. Because people you least expect to fall by the sword of COVID, they are falling. Surgeons, Dr. Planjuru, I least expected. Dr. Kisei is followed through.
The one in Kwadaso.
And these are very dangerous times, I must admit.
Okay.
Very, very dangerous times.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me welcome my
you want to welcome Sam George yourself?
Yes, I want
to welcome Sam George.
He didn't buy one of the shield though. That's my brother too.
Senior, I shall make sure you have one within the next 24 hours. In fact, I have one already. That is a spare one, so that I have not used. I'll let you have it.
Thumbs up, sir.
All right, so he's my big brother. So
Someone George is member of Parliament for Ningo Pram. He's also here. Let me go though and speak to Franklin Kujo before Sam George comes in. Franklin, good morning.
Good morning, Godfred. Good morning, the two honorable members in the studio, and good morning to your viewers and listeners.
All right, thank you for joining us once again on a Saturday. And I'm sure you were looking forward to the voter registration exercise and how it would go. What have been your observations so far? Perhaps we can start from the equipment.
Well, first of all, the exercise, nobody had any opposition to registering people. I suspect that it was the manner in which this whole enterprise was being shepherded that we had problems with. The jury is still out there. I mean, we do not know the error margins with which these new equipment are returning. I guess we'd have to wait until the process is over in terms of the machines. But generally, in terms of what I've seen so far, well, except the chaotic news that I see, I don't know what else to say. I suspect that Ghanaians love to register every point in time, and they are willing to register in spite of the social or physical distancing protocols that obviously people who were probably much more in tune with global trends had advised. You see, nobody said you couldn't organize an election or a process to register. People suggested, including us, that you are perfectly within your rights to do so, but you must be careful of the unintended consequences. And in this case, not even unintended. These are real consequences that are obviously befalling us, essentially playing out in our very eyes. So I can't say much except to say that I wish everybody registering well. I certainly wouldn't get close to any of those centers until I'm thoroughly satisfied that it is good to do so.
You are not satisfied right now?
I don't think I'd like to risk in order to go and register. First of all, I think the process was quite arbitrary to start with. And so for me, I already told you, I made a pledge that I wasn't getting closer. And also it's compounded by the presence of COVID. But look, this is just within my right to say so. I do not want to begrudge anybody who is in line. Indeed, I do not want to condescend in making my commentary about anybody who is registering at all. It is a right that is reserved for everybody to register. Same as it's a right for some of us to also say, well, I'm not necessarily going to be part of the process because of A, B, C, D. Otherwise, I wish that the physical distancing protocols would be observed. I wish that the whole idea of vouching for people, which we are still yet to hear about, and I think we picked up snippets of, issues where people may be going from one polling station to the other to vouch for persons. So it is still, the jury is still out there, and you see, because of our own neutral position, which we took, which the conservative judges thought it was not sensible. We do not want to be making commentary to suggest that, but we told you so, we told you so. I would rather wait and see how all of this pans out. But I'm not the least impressed about the protocols attending this particular enterprise at all.
Okay.
And indeed, to see that some senior officers or politicians, friends of mine, who have breached these protocols is unfortunate. I mean, I'm referring to my good friend Carlos. It's unfortunate what he did, and indeed he's suffered for it, and rightly so. I suspect that what many Ghanaians are now living with is the fact that politics triumphs over human lives, and if anybody and everybody registering is happy to associate with this particular notion, well, so be it. It is supposed to be a competitive election, and competitive politics allow for ideas to blossom. Unfortunately, I do not think that the ideas regarding the process of voting is anyone that was accorded with any form of decorum in terms of counter ideas to what currently is playing out. So, I'd like to say that I wish everybody well.
Okay. Now, on the issue of the military deployment, on the concerns raised on Monday, and the explanations that came forth from the government, what did you make of that part? Because there are those who have said, well, if we had all these situations, why did you have to wait? But the government says, well, these things have been going on for some time now. Perhaps people were just not aware that they were happening, but they've been going on for some time, and for them, security is paramount at this point. Did the explanation the government gave on Monday make sense to you?
Well, you see, when you are drawing closer to tense moments, and elections are really tense issues, and African elections are always tense. Every mileage, every move you make would be read with some level of suspicion. I think it was utterly needless, really, to have been deploying, in fact, increased deployment. It wasn't deployment, and I think the Minister of Defense was very wrong. I think the people of South K2 are not schmucks, they are not idiots, to have noticed that there's been an increased presence in the military. And indeed, to think that immigration officers were doing their work anyway, they do their work every day anyway. The borders have been shut already. If indeed the ruse is to explain that, well, the ruse for this explanation is that COVID could infiltrate, I'm wondering how that is plausible, because we're actually violating COVID rules internally more than we think we'll be getting across our borders. I mean, how many persons have been rounded up in the northern parts of our country due to, infiltrations here and there? I think we are observing the breaking the COVID rules internally, including ministers of state, rather than those who are normal citizens who have already been contained within their borders. I think it was thoroughly unthinkable that something of this sort could be done. So the ruse that for this explanation is an offside one, unfortunately. Nothing to do with my allegiance to the region. In fact, I'm now even an OT person against my will. But having said that, I think nothing of the explanations makes make administrative and security sense. I think it was not needed. And as I've relayed, the people of South K2 are not dunces, and I suspect they know when there's been increased military presence. And see, the explanation that they were dotted all over the country, and so what? The people are saying that, look, your explanations that because of COVID cannot be contemplative of the situation at all. And you see, what compounded the notion of this rather underhand, or if you like, overt behavior was simply because a minister. He's not a minister. K.T. Hammond is not a minister.
No, he's not. He's a member of parliament.
Yes, I think he's rather offending commentary, suggesting that the people were not necessarily Ghanaian. Well, was actually the one that did the security operations in. And I do not think our soldiers must be allowed or must be used in this particular way. They must be defending the country against a common enemy, but when it matters most, they must be used in such a way that they do not become political pawns. Unfortunately, politicians have found a way of undermining our public institutions that are supposed to be the sole preserve of our constitution. And so I was worried that the commentary did not make sense at all from K.T. Hammond. And that somehow fed into this narrative that the people of the Volta, indeed, South K2, were supposed to be some aliens. And don't forget, if you look at the permutations of the voting, if the current party believes that they won because some angels fell from heaven to vote for them, they ought to be careful, because half of their votes actually came from apathy votes in the Volta region. I mean, this is known. And at the end, the Voltarians are pathetic, the NDC loses far. So for you to be making suggestions or to be appearing to be applauding those kinds of underhand dealings is rather unfortunate. But as my good friend, I'm yet to meet him physically. The MP for the
Empriso
has intelligently analyzed. You see, is in intense election. It's not even intense elections. In very competitive global politics, especially the kinds we see on the continent, it is very important not to be seen or not to be suspected of anything that your opponent may use against you. And I think they gave a cool PR opportunity to the NDC in order to bury them in the propaganda that came about as well. it is not necessary.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa. You are watching The Big Issue and listening to The Big Issue on 97.3 Citi FM. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll hear from the Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram on the matter, and also enter into other issues. The Auditor General has received a 4-page response from the President this morning.
Every day at 8 p.m., Citi Newsroom brings you analysis of the major news stories of the day. It's in-depth, comprehensive, and researched.
Disperse the crowd using tear gas, but more weapons have been fired. And I'm sorry, speaking to you directly from the window of a police station in between two troubles.
Please, I'm just after the fetching of the water because the government is saying that they should give us some water freely. But hereby, we are not seeing anybody who is bringing the water for us to fetch.
It's 1 hour of local news from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. The Citi Newsroom, every day on Citi TV. It's your world.
Imagine if you can get all the understanding on some of the difficult subjects you struggle with in school. As a student, do you feel dissatisfied with how hard it is to figure out the subjects you're learning? Or as a parent or guardian, do you worry that your child is struggling to understand some of the subjects in school? Well, now you don't need to sign up for extra lessons or tutors. Simply tune in to Class Act, Mondays to Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. on Citi TV. Class Act is a show that seeks to enable senior high school students gain a much better understanding of what they learn in school. All you need is a TV, a chair, your notebook, and your pen. Get clarity on subjects such as maths, English, IT, and science. Class Act airs every Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on Citi TV, on DSTV channel 363 and GoTV channel 182. Don't forget your pens, pencils, and your notebooks, and tune in to Class Act, only on Citi TV.
It's inspiration. It's the word. The teachings.
When is your time? When is your season? When is your time? No amount of lies, no amount of liars, political liars, financial liars, family liars, hatred or spiritual liars, no amount of it can stop you.
Tune in to Voice of Inspiration with Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. on Citi TV.
There are those with untold stories, unraveled feats, life-changing stories, and lasting legacies. They tell their stories themselves right here on Footprints.
So we go to someone who were put in our various cells, and then someone you have it's a huge prison. And then it was then that it dawned on me that I was really in big trouble.
Do you think that the overthrow of Liman was justified?
I think that with hindsight, there was no justification.
Be inspired by their hard work and resilience that led to those outstanding achievements as we trace their footsteps through the capsule of time.
Because of my upbringing, my mother, my father, they are, Christianity.
Yeah.
So because of that,
strong hands at home.
Even though I'm the guy smoking, doing all kinds of that, I've never tried.
You've never tried?
No, never tried weed or anything.
You've never tried weed?
Even drinking, alcohol, no.
Why should you people put everything, Kwame. Everything was done before Nkrumah arrived in the country.
No, aho ni leba ye.
Aho leba ye.
So join me, Samuel Atamensa, and my guests every Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. only on Citi TV.
Footprint is sponsored by Bethel Logistics Company Limited, experts in shipping logistics.
Hello and welcome back to The Big Issue. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo, discussing a week of significant political and public health issues with the start of the voters registration exercise, as well as a press conference by the NDC alleging that the government was intimidating people in parts of the country, particularly the Volta region, with the deployment of military personnel. I've been having the conversation with the Honorable Seth Kwame Achampo, Member of Parliament for Empire. So Samnati George is also here, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram, and also joining us via Zoom is Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa. And if you also want to join us with comments, you can do so via the WhatsApp line 0549 986 996, 0549 986 996, or 0550 585832, 0550 585832. We are also on Twitter at Citi973. You can tweet at us via the hashtag The Big Issue, or you can follow me as well at East Sportsman and use the same hashtag, The Big Issue, to reach us. We're also streaming on Facebook on the Citi TV Facebook page, as well as the Citi FM Facebook page. You can leave your comments down there as well. And the one request, keep the language civil, and we will gladly read your comments on air. So, Honorable Sam George, your week started on Monday. His started on Tuesday because he had to deal with the voter registration exercise. But prior to that, your party bussed itself to the Volta region to hold a press conference. And there are those who are saying, well, it was perhaps much ado about nothing, listening to the government's explanation a few minutes after your presser. Were you satisfied with the answers the government gave you? Security, COVID, we must protect the borders. It has nothing to do with voter registration.
Well, let me say a very good morning to our viewers, to yourself, and to my brother, big brother, Honorable Seth. It is unfortunate where we find ourselves that you have a government that is not candid, is not truthful, and doesn't speak to the facts. When the government says that they've done deployments to the Volta region
and other parts of the country,
and the Upper East and Upper West region, at the time that we held our press conference, there were deployments in only 4 regions: the Upper East, the Upper West, the OT, and the Volta region. And arguably, these 4 regions are regions that are known to be strongholds of the NDC. At the time, on Monday, when we had that press conference, those were the only places where military deployments had been done, with a chunk of the military deployment being in the Volta and OT regions.
Not by the numbers they gave us.
Again, I'll come to that. The president and the Minister for Defense have lied. Honorable Seth is the Parliamentary Select Committee Chairman on Defense and Security, or in Defense and Interior. The Minister for Defense, Dominic Nito, did a meet the press, I think, on Tuesday or Wednesday. He lied.
And that's just Monday, 10 minutes after your press.
Yes, he lied. I'm putting it on record that he lied. He sat with Umar Sanda and lied again. Our Minister for Defense lied to Ghanaians.
That's a pretty
strong allegation. The President of
Ghana
addressed the country and lied.
Why? Lied how?
Fantastic. The President and the Minister came and recited a set of numbers. We have 97 men deployed in the Volta region. Only this number deployed. It's a lie.
Do you have contrary numbers?
Absolutely.
Give us your numbers.
Listen, is it only men of the Ghana Armed Forces that have been deployed into the Volta region and to those border regions?
Police.
So why are they giving us only numbers from the Ghana Armed Forces? The numbers that the Minister for Defense mentioned are only numbers relative to the Ghana Armed Forces.
Were those the same numbers that the people you complained about? You didn't complain about immigration. You didn't complain about police.
Listen,
your party said
I can show you. Relax. I can show you even a video from my party's visits to the Volta region. Men of the Ghana Immigration Service are carrying weapons from the 5BN. 5BN is not a unit of the Immigration Service. 5BN is a battalion of the Ghana Armed Forces. It's a detachment of the Ghana Army. So you cannot say that immigration officers are just there and doing nothing. Our complaint was about the deployment of security forces, not armed forces, not the army.
Okay.
You have the army, you have the police also doing its own deployment, you've got the immigration doing its own deployment there, you've got the BNI doing deployment there, you've got national security doing deployment in there. Defense intelligence it has also been deployed there. At least 6 security institutions have been deployed there. So if men from 6 different institutions have been deployed in the Volta region and OT region, and we challenge you to it, and you want to downplay it by coming to give us numbers of only one of the units or the security agencies, and claim that that is the number of men, so that when they tell you that, oh, there are only 23 men in the whole of OT region, it makes it look like the NDC is making is much ado about nothing. Whereas there may be 23 Ghana Army men, but put together, the security force on the ground there is over 300.
I don't feel it's justified based on the concerns they have with rising numbers in COVID, terrorism, and all those things.
There. I'm dealing with the issues one by one. Okay. I'm establishing the fact that our President and Minister for Defense have lied about the numbers of security men deployed in those regions. They've played semantics with the numbers. They've given only numbers relative to the Ghana Army, whereas they know that it is not only men of the Ghana Army who have been deployed, and that men from other units, the Foreign Police Unit, FPU, is deployed in those regions. You have the striking force, you've got your counter-terrorism unit, all deployed in there. Men from all of these units have been deployed. The Minister for Interior should come out and say that I'm lying. These are all men, they are on the ground. We've seen, and I can show you the video, I can show you a picture. The gentleman, the immigration officer who was accused of molesting or beating up a 19-year-old girl, he's carrying, I have his picture here. In the picture of him and the video, I have a picture and video of him. You will see him carrying an AK-47. As is standard with the Ghana Armed Forces, almost all weapons are labeled relative to the units that it has been given to. You will see the number on the weapon, on the back of the AK-47. It reads 5BN. There is no 5BN in the Ghana immigrations. So weapons have been given to services that normally do not carry weapons or do not have the weaponry. We know our Ghana immigration is undertooled when it comes to weaponry.
Yeah. And you passed the law to arm them. You are in Parliament.
Absolutely. Okay. I don't have a problem with arming them. Okay. All I'm saying is you cannot paint a picture that only this number of men are there when you have a lot more number of men there from other units who are equally heavily armed and doing intimidation. It is dishonest, it is untruthful, it shows a lack of integrity. Now to the argument about COVID. When did COVID start and when did we lock our borders? Was it not in March? How come the deployment order for this was only given towards the end of June? Why? In March, April, May, COVID was not a threat at our border towns? How come the deployment order, and look, the deployment order that went out, the operational order that went out, this operation is valid until about the middle of August, about a week after the EC finishes its registration. The deployment started a week to the registration and it's supposed to end a week after the registration. Why? COVID is only going to come in during the registration period.
The minister said they can extend it.
For the 3 months before, since we locked down our border, before the registration, why COVID was not a threat? Or is that an admittance that the president, who is chairman of the Defense Council, of the Army Council, the vice president, who is chairman of the Police Council, our Minister for Defense and Minister for Interior have failed on the job and deserve to resign because they failed for 3 months to realize that there was a threat to Ghanaians through our border, and it is only during the registration they realize it. Look, they cannot throw dust in our eyes. Ghanaians are sensitive and we are wise. If we were fools before, now we've grown older, we have become wise. The games and the tricks will not play. That the military and security deployment and the threat of COVID to Ghanaians only arose at the time we're going to start a registration in those 4 regions. And after we've complained, then you see them go and drop speckles of men along other places. At the time we spoke, Doma, there's a border crossing at Doma, there was nobody there. There was no military deployment there. A military deployment went there about 24 to 36 hours after we had complained that there was nobody there. Elubo, the same thing. So you ask yourself, what was the rationale behind the deployment of these men there? Don't forget that in the Upper East and Upper West and Northern regions, you had Operation Eagle Claw 2020 that had completed. Operation Eagle Claw is a known counter-terrorism operation that has started since, I think, 2018 or 2019, which shows the readiness of the Ghana security, especially the armed forces, led by the Ghana Army, to show its readiness on the ground with our border, again, especially on our border with Burkina Faso, because of the threat of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb and Boko Haram. So it's a standard that one, nobody has a problem. When Operation Eagle Claw happened in 2019, the NDC didn't talk.
You mean Conquered Fist? Eagle Claw is the one that happened last week.
Yes.
Conquered Fist was 2019.
Conquered Fist, but Eagle Claw is running.
Yes,
this is the second time it is. Yes. But when Eagle Claw happened, when Eagle Claw was going on, we didn't have any qualms. Nobody in the NDC raised an issue about why there was military presence. Why were we seeing low-flying helis and all of that? We didn't have an issue with it because we understood that was a counter-terrorism operation that the military was doing. So it is not as though the NDC has a problem with our security intelligence and intelligence agencies doing what they have to do to keep the integrity of our territorial borders safe. We don't have a problem with that. But when you begin to do deployments, and you tell me you are doing deployments for COVID, and there are instances that have been reported to us with verifiable evidence of these men going into people's homes, going into markets, pulling people off motorcycles, school kids. There's a video of an immigration officer standing there and kids crying and begging, children less than 10 years old. And you tell me that is an operation against COVID? That is callousness of the highest order. And you see, one thing they should bear in mind, those who do those deployments, is that what they don't know, if they think they have taken adequate precaution, is that not all the men there, not all the men who've been deployed, do not have a conscience. Some of them have a heart. Some of them remember that they serve the country, they serve the constitution, they serve the people of Ghana. They don't serve the Minister for Defense or the President. They don't serve a political party. And they are working in the interest of the people. And some of them are Voltarians themselves. So you sent him home to go and brutalize his own people. But you see, at the end of the day, Honorable Katie Hammond is no kid in this game. Honorable Katie Hammond is no loose talker. Honorable Katie Hammond was a spearhead for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in opposition in the energy sector. It is thanks to the internal politics that he has not found himself as the Minister for Energy. But when it came to doing all the dirty work for Nana Addo as candidate between 2012 and 2016, it was Katie Hammond. So he's no loose talker. He knows what he's talking about. So when Katie comes to tell you that this operation was not about COVID, but was about stopping Togolese, he's not speaking off the cuff. He's not speaking tosh. He's speaking fact. He's speaking truth.
But it's still his opinion is not the position of the government.
Right. You think he's a small boy? You think he doesn't know what he's talking about?
He's speaking as Katie Hammond.
My people say, when the tilapia comes to tell you that the crocodile is sick, you better believe it. You are on land. The tilapia and the crocodile, they live under the water. So when he comes to tell you that something is sick there, know that he knows what he's talking about. Katie Hammond is not a small boy in the NPP. And when he speaks, today you are telling us that we should not take him serious. When he was speaking on the energy and running around doing all the merry things he was doing at that time he was speaking what? Look, the truth is Katie lets the cat out of the bag, whether consciously or mistakenly. But everybody, what he spoke is the truth that every ordinary Ghanaian knows. Kojo, you know that this military deployment is not about COVID. You want to go to heaven. You won't lie. You know it's not about COVID. you know that this deployment is about the elections.
Okay.
Honorable Seth, who is here, he's a fantastic gentleman. He won't lie. If you ask him, tell me the truth. If Christ is sitting here now, he'll tell you. He'll tell you that this thing was not about COVID. Why? Are the security men health professionals? Are they trained in determining? Are they going around? If you want to check for COVID, when you go to our airports and you go to all the institutions that we want to test for COVID, what do we have there? Is it AK-47 or is thermometer gun?
That point is well established. Let's go on. Let's talk about the voter registration exercise. What have been your impressions about the execution of this? You have been in your constituency monitoring everything
every day.
Why can't you be in Accra and allow the process to go on?
Why should I allow it to go on? Master, on the first day, Tuesday, let me not DHS in my constituency. We registered 1, 2, 3. The machines broke down. We had to go back to Sapperman to go and get a new machine. Brand new machines. It registered 3 people, broke down.
Since then, it's been working.
It's constantly breaking down. Machines are constantly breaking down. Constantly on the neck of my EC director. Constantly on the neck of registration officers and arrows SDs, special duty arrows, chasing them because either a scanner is not working. You see, when we spoke about the exigencies of the time and the challenges, anybody who is IT savvy knows that when you're using the scanners are the ones that take the fingerprints.
Yeah.
Now, you said people should wash their hand just before, and then they sanitize again. And then they go and put their fingers on the scanner to take the fingerprint. Before that is done, the ROSD or the scanner operator also takes a sanitizer wipe to wipe the surface of the thing because someone else has put his hand on it. Because you don't want transmission of any debris. Now, those machines are not built to have chemical sanitizers wiping on them every other 3 minutes, and it's beginning to affect the sensitivities of the scanners. So you realize that the processes are so slow, and when you go around, in every place where they're complaining about the processes being slow, it's 2 things. One, a lot of time is spent on the scanners, and the way the system is built is different from the previous system. The previous system, when you scan your fingers, when they scan your fingerprint, and then it's time to take your picture, the operator is the one who adjusts it and then clicks to take the picture. If the picture comes out blurry, all he needs to do is to retake the picture again. Now this system, it is not the operator that captures the picture. The system is built that after the fingerprint has been taken, it will capture the picture automatically. Now, whilst the person is sitting there, at times the person has not positioned himself well, and crap, the machine takes a picture. Once it takes the picture and the picture is not good, the system itself rejects the picture. Now, unfortunately, when it rejects the picture, it doesn't go back for you to take a new picture. It says you should go back and do the fingerprint again. And that fingerprint is one of the things delaying. So you realize that a picture is not taken right, and you have to go back and do a fingerprint process that took 5 minutes again, do all over again. It's creating delays. Again, even the software itself that is running, the speed of the software, the challenges that the officers have. And when you talk to the EC officers, at times it's frustrating. I feel bad for them. At times you even take them lunch and they don't even have time to eat the lunch because they're trying to make the demands, the demands that people are making.
But these are not just isolated cases.
Kojo, isolated where? This is not COVID though. There's no isolation center.
Do you have these problems in Empraiso?
You would encounter a couple of issues, but it's not. The situations vary.
They are unique. That's what I say. It could be.
Well, maybe then this will lend credence.
It will not lend credence.
Wait. This will lend credence to the argument that the machines that have been sent to certain constituencies, there's a certain arrangement being done. People lend credence to it because if in Empraiso where we know that MVP has a stronghold there, machines seem to be working fine. And I hear
there have been problems. He does admit.
So 1 or 2. He says 1 or 2. But in Ngo Pram Pram,
you have a lot.
Where you know that Charlie, Sam George is there, and God is there, NDC will win with a big margin. Then you're having plenty problems with the machine.
Hold on, let me ask you
then we need to ask Jim Mensa a question. She and Bossman aside. And Serebo Kwapo. Now what kind of machines? Because you see the machines too, they are all labeled per constituency.
Oh really?
Yes. The machines are labeled per constituency. So the machines that came to Ngo Pram Pram were programmed and labeled before they came in for Ngo Pram Pram. The ones going to Empraiso were labeled. That's why I'm saying that if someone wants to play some game, you get it. It could have happened. But I mean, all in all, you realize that we are failing Ghanaians as leaders because we have not taken into consideration the health situation and healthcare of Ghanaians by going ahead to do this irresponsible registration that is putting the risk. Look, MPP did primaries. How many centers did you have? Not up to 3,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and you see the deaths and cases that have arisen out of that primaries 3 weeks ago. Today is exactly 3 weeks. They had it. You've seen the deaths, you've seen the cases that have popped up. Simply from those small gatherings that did not last. Those things started at 7 and by 1 they were done. They counted. By 3 o'clock everybody was off. In this instance, you have people coming to the polling station at 2 a.m. and being there till 6 p.m. They are not able to register. They go and come back the next day. And the numbers there are bigger than what you saw at the MPP polling. So imagine what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. Till 2 weeks after the registration. Imagine the amount of deaths and cases that we are going to occasion on Ghanaians. Because right now, social distancing has been thrown to the dogs.
Well, the EC is fixing that. If you look at the...
Fixing that with what?
Well, they have brought in, they've updated their queue processes. So hopefully going forward, that
you see, that is fine English that doesn't work on the ground. Could you come to the ground and come and see? When somebody has come there from 2 a.m. and the person is there, and the person is 7 p.m., 3 p.m., and the person has not been registered.
Nobody's supposed to be there at that time anyway.
Sorry?
Nobody's supposed to be there at that time anyway. Because the EC says a specific number of people are supposed to be registered at a certain time. Perhaps the MPs also need to help with the education process.
But the fact that we are sitting there doesn't mean you shouldn't face reality. Stop the book long thing. The thing we are talking about reality. People want to register. The person comes there at 2 a.m. because he wants to be first in the queue. They've started the queue at 2 a.m. You say you should sleep in his house. You sleep in your house. Have you registered?
I will find time and go and register.
You go there at 3 p.m. Walk there with your fine English and tell me that you are going to register.
Okay.
You will sleep there.
I have a question for the two of you, though, on the processes. And the EC has raised this, and none of us has mentioned, but tell me this. Why do you have party agents at the registration centers who, after you have registered and you receive your card, take your card from you and write the details of it on another list? And from what we are told, both political parties are doing this. And the EC has said to people, these are not approved persons who are supposed to be there. Why are you doing that? I'm asking, I don't expect that.
I mean,
it's something you should know.
Unless you haven't, involved yourself in our body politic and the workings of the EC. They are there as observers.
But taking people's voter ID cards?
I'm coming. That is the essence of us going through an IPAC and a DIPAC or whatever we do at the municipal inter-party advisory committees that has been established so far through conventions. And we send our observers there because of the mistrust we have amongst ourselves. Why should just an exercise of registering voters generate such tension? It is because we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust ourselves as a people. It's so unfortunate. You've seen the political animal in my brother today at peak because we are in July. With less than 4 months, we are entering into the general elections. Campaign mode has started. There's not some judge, the MP who speaks intelligently on issues in Parliament. No.
Are you suggesting that I'm not speaking intelligently? Is this suggesting I'm not speaking intelligently?
I said I described you appropriately. I knew what I was saying. You know what I'm saying. You see? And this is Ghana for you. That's where our body politic is taking us. And I'm not surprised, but I've been in it before. And when I was in minority, I would charge like he's charged. Okay, but today, where the buck stops with us, and I must be more responsible, and I must demonstrate that I gain his confidence. So I must act in a way to get his confidence, so we can all move on. Fortunately for me, we've all come to a level playing field where the EC was leading us to, that we should get into this engagement. It's still being monitored, though. But let me advance this matter. They are there as observers, and that has been the practice. It is not new. It is not new to me. My years of being in this exercise is not new. And you have the two in political parties who have observers sitting next to the EC desk is MPP and DC, because we are the ones that at the end of the day gain the numbers. And it is there. This is no news at all.
Yeah, you can observe, but some to take, after the person is done, you bring your voter ID card.
I said,
then you write.
What was my initial answer to you? The mistrust. That is why. So I want to make sure that my agent brings me a record that tallies with the EC's record. At the end of the day, whatever numbers the EC arrives at, because I distrust the EC, and my colleague who is competing with me distrusts me, and I also distrust him, everybody keep your record. So when we go for dispute resolutions, that is where you pull all these numbers from. And mind you, we've been through a very laborious exercise in 2013. That should advise and educate everybody that, hey, this is a very serious business. We don't need to toy with or joke with.
Right.
So those are the clear principles underpinning such behavior. I won't take any other answer from anywhere. That is it. It's the clear mistrust.
So Sam, you don't trust people then?
You see, it's a factor. Okay, the fact that, well, the EC herself or the EC as an institution has not engendered trust across both parties. I mean, I'm going into an exercise where one of the deputy commissioners says that my political party is a threat to democracy. So if the EC does not deem me as a credible democratic player, and he is going to be the referee in a game, why should I allow him? It's like Hearts and Kotoko going to play game, and I am a Hearts fan, and I come to the field and I see the referee dressed like a referee, but his jersey is not black, his jersey is red, like the way Kotoko jersey is, and you expect me to be happy and just let it go? No. You see.
So your people are doing this. You have people there doing that. You Sam Judge.
Nanka, I have people there who are recording everything, and you see, look, there are two sides to it. One is the mistrust, and the second part of it has to do. In fact, there are three sides. One is the mistrust amongst us. The second part has to do with you generating your own data, given the circumstances we are in. This year, nobody is going to be able to do any big rally. I'm not going to be able to go into a community and hold rallies and bring people and do my health walks and have the youth come out and I'll talk to them. No. I'm going to have to meet people in small groups. Targeted campaign. I need their contacts. How do I? They're coming out to register. And so I'm picking not just their registration details, but their contacts so that I'm able to stay in touch with them and be able to send my campaign to the doorstep of everybody. If you think you don't need it, stay in your house and wait for COVID to go and come and do big rally. The third issue has to do with actually checks and balances. I'll give you my constituency for day one.
Okay.
Day one. What the EC gave us, the total number of registered votes or registrants on day one to the district and national office differed from what we collated. The EC's was 20 registrants more than what we had collated. But because I had agents at each station taking the detail, and my director of elections for the district had compiled it and handed it over to me, we were able to go and sit to the EC and say, there's a problem with your figures. And the EC said no. We said yes, let's look at it. So we brought our figures, and they do what they call end of day reports.
Yes.
And start of day report for the next day. So we had a start of day for day one and end of day for day one. And I had it from all the 12 centers that were registering. So we took it center by center with the EC. Eventually we realized that the problem had come from the EC's data entry. In one of the polling stations, only 53 people had been registered. But in transmitting to the region, they had made it 63. The 5 had become 6, so 10 had been added there. In another place, it was 90, it was made 100. So we realized where those 20 came from and got the EC to do a new document and send to the region and say, this is the correction. If I did not have agents who were taking details there, I would not have been able to question that.
All right,
so these are some of the reasons why you do these things. Because, and it may not have been a malicious intent on the part of the EC. It could have been a natural, genuine mistake, but that's why you need someone who is acting as a check and balance, who watches the watchman.
All right. Thank you very much. Sam Nati, Judge Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram, and also...
Could you, before you jump on,
yeah, I was going to Franklin.
Some use some strong language, and I know he used some strong language for his colleague who doubles in the executive as the defense minister, and the President of the Republic. I think some of these things, he knows that sometimes
who sent you the message to come and read?
Nobody sent me a message. Have I opened my phone?
I said they were being dishonest. I said they were being dishonest, and I've established their dishonesty.
You see, today, you and I are public officers.
Sure.
And we are charting a path. My biggest concern is that this enterprise, no one holds the magic wand to it forever and ever.
Sure.
So tomorrow, the tables will turn.
Absolutely.
And you know my stance. I always would prefer us to lead our people where we want to go. Look, this morning driving to the studio, I listened to about 3 or 4 radio stations, and I was asking myself, are we really helping ourselves with these things? Because year on, when there's a registration exercise, you hear, look at the reportage of the whole of this week since the exercise began. Hotspots, flashes, the same neighborhoods, characters where you usually hear these busy conversations. This is what is happening. And I asked myself a very simple, what have we learned as a people so far in this enterprise? So I'm not saying everybody can be like Kwame Champong.
Okay.
But at least at the end of the day,
do better.
We can do better.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's also been, I have a lot of messages to go through. And on WhatsApp, keep sending the messages. 0549986996, 0550585832. Let me just take a couple, and then we'll talk about the DOM level issue quickly and wrap up the first part of the conversation. So, Walanyo, okay, I'll separate the DOM level messages for a bit. Today marks the 5th day of the voter registration exercise. Good citizens of Ghana, come out and register your numbers, is the message from Tofik, from Kaswa. Erico from La Paz says the EC is not telling us the truth. There is no registration going on at La Paz, Happy Home Polling Station 1 and 2. The truth is that the EC don't have all the machines. Well, Erico, I also suggest that you check the deployment list. They might not be expected there yet. So it's also important that you check. It's not like it's happening simultaneously across the country. They are moving from place to place. So perhaps La Paz, Happy Home Polling Station 1 and 2, it is not yet their turn. Please, Sam George and the NDC know that we Voltarians are tired of this I care for you posture during elections. We seek development and progress. So Sam, that is for you from a chap called Danyiba, sending it in. Sam has given a very candid presentation. The government should agree that the deployment was due to the voter registration and not COVID. That is coming from Lambongan. So last week, the president directed the Auditor General, Daniel Yadomlevo, to take his accumulated annual leave. There was a statement issued to him signed by Mr. Eugene Ahin. We discussed it a bit. Well, the Auditor General also decided to respond, and that was on the 3rd of July, where he also wrote to the president and says that in bits, I'm just going to read parts and portions of it because it's in the public domain. He says, I write to notify that I started my leave for the year 2020 on 1st July out of deference to the office of His Excellency the President of the Republic, and also out of the deep-seated respect I have for the office. I think it necessary, however, to bring to the attention of the High Office of the President a few matters relevant to our constitutional governance, due processes, and the rule of law. And he goes then on to say that my knowledge of recent labor law and practices in the country is that no worker is deemed to have accumulated any leave on account of their having failed, omitted, neglected, or even refused to enjoy their right to annual leave, which the law guarantees for their benefit, not the employer. I'm also informed that by law, every person is entitled, save in very limited circumstances, to waive what the law has ordained for their benefit, in this case, a worker's leave. Be that as it may, the directive that I proceed on leave and hand over all matters to listen to the office of Mr. Johnson Nekwama, with all due respect, has serious implications for the constitutional independence of the office of the Auditor General. And then he goes on to say that he has been constrained to make the point as a result of making the following observations. Previous correspondence from the chairman of the Audit Service Board, who works at the office of the senior minister, together with public pronouncements by ministers, make it clear that the Auditor General's work is embarrassing the government, that the office must have been aware also that several appointees of the president have not since the year 2017 taken their annual leave. And then in the matter of Crowell and Associates versus Auditor General, the Supreme Court offered the lawyers 10 days from June 24 2020 to bring their written submissions, and the Auditor General is to inspect documents or evidence of work done for the senior minister before going back to the Supreme Court. He then goes on to thank the President. Well, this last night, the Office of the President responded 4 pages to also explain their side of the story. Very lengthy one, but they basically go on to break down the arguments made by Mr. Domelevo in his letter to the President, where they tend to explain by law why the President can ask him to take leave and why he should have taken his leave, and in fact ends up by adding a couple more days. 44 days more have been added to the leave days, the 123 that he was originally supposed to take. And this was signed by Nana Asante Bedia too. If you want more details, you can just go on to citynewsroom.com. You will find the response of the President there. Franklin Kujo, let me come to you. There are those who said this sends a wrong signal based on who Domelevo is. There are those who also say, well, the law is the law. He should obey the law and stop expressing opinions. And there are those who also say, well, the Auditor General is not a man. It's an institution. If he goes on leave, the good work that the Department of the Auditor General is doing will continue. Where do you stand on this?
Well, we probably wouldn't have heard all of this had we not had a very activist Auditor General. An activist here, I mean someone who decided to actualize the functions of the rather dormant office. I must admit that he's been an activist to almost a fault, which is something I totally am in love with. And I suspect that has become a source of discomfort for officialdom. I must admit that we've never seen this activism of publicly, I feel like a constitutionally mandated body headed by such a person before. And so to those who are confounded by the rather outward approach of Domelevo, I would say that they should not be worried at all. I think it is in line with once in a while you get activists of that nature and those who do not believe that their service to the state would also mean their service to whoever is in office, depending on the person's proclivities towards the issues of accountability. I worry that the same strategy that I spoke about not long ago during in the case of the military deployment or the security service deployment is what is playing out here. No matter how genuine you may want to be, you may want to undertake a particular decision, the optics of it, the way you communicate it, what actually precedes the communication of these kinds of, orders is what everybody else will be looking at. And I do not think that people, ordinary people looking at this, basically judging from what had happened, would be wrong from saying that Domelevo has become probably too much a thorn in the flesh of certain officials within government, and in this case, the senior minister. Had this not happened, I do not think that he probably would not be. He wouldn't be treated this particular way. And I'm saying that no matter what you believe in, that the Constitution allows people to go and leave. The fact of the matter is that I don't think it's a contract between the appointing authority and then the person appointed that willy-nilly they have to go and leave, even when they are performing their functions well. I mean, look, people must be responsible, I understand, and people's health situation are their own cross to carry. I do not believe that the government cares so much about the health of Domelevo to the extent that they would be issuing orders for him to go on leave. And in this case, they've added another number of days. Of course, they tried to tell Domelevo that, since you say you are taking your leave in 2020 as well, you're adding a number of days to it. This banter is not needed at all. It's needless. I think if the gentleman decides that he's forfeiting his leave, he forfeits it anyway. I did not see, because he's not going to benefit from the leave anyway. I mean, I suspect that once you go on leave, you'll be paid, right? If he didn't go on leave, he'll still be paid anyway. So he loses nothing. And there's not been any doctor's report, medical report that suggests that Domelevo is so tired from the performance of his functions that everything would have to come to a standstill because he should go on leave. I understand also that yes, it's an institution, and so work goes on. But let's not forget, sometimes the institutional heads are themselves very, very, very useful to moving conversations. And in this case, there's been quite a number of them. The cruel one, the ministers taking pay without what's it called, double pay or something of the sort.
Then the scholarship issues too.
The scholarship issues too. So it does a great disservice to the office of government for my good friend, the executive secretary, to be issuing all these kinds of directives, however constitutionally mandated he believes he is. I don't think this is serving the presidency quite well at all. In fact, it's rather making the presidency look like they are not interested in accountability. And I do not believe the president is not interested in accountability. But like they say, you judge the book by its cover and its content. In this case, both the content and the cover do not serve the presidency well at all. I think they're digging their own grave. And you see, our elections are always, sometimes there's high octane spin around corruption, even though we've managed to steer it away from that to certain issues. But corruption will feature largely in this election. And so you are arming the opposition to say that now almost all the accountability institutions, in fact, the last man standing, because I think the Special Prosecutor's Office probably is the run on leave rather, it beggars belief that my good friend, the executive secretary and the president would be seen to be bantering with a body that has become the last bastion within the public sector to uphold accountability and public order. I do not think the executive secretary should be prescribing disciplinary actions for constitutionally mandated bodies. It sends the wrong signal. And I worry that it will become one of the thorny issues of this election. They are defining the parameters for running this election. And on that score, I think they failed. I don't think they are doing anything better at all. I think they should just look at the processes to allow him to be his own man.
All right. Thank you very much, Franklin. Sam, Domelevo, the Office of the President has responded to his letter from yesterday.
What you have is a fight between the Auditor General and the Corruption General. That's basically what we're seeing. A fight between the Auditor General and the Corruption General.
How do you mean?
Domelevo is arguably, in this Fourth Republic, and if not possible, since the inception of Ghana, the one single public official who has taken the fight against corruption head on, irrespective of whose ox is God. Domelevo was appointed by the NDC in 2016.
Just before you left.
Domelevo is the one who carried out the audits of government business in 2015 and 2016. Because you see, the audits are not done year on year. I serve on the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament and I've worked with Domelevo. We have worked on the 2015 and 2016 reports. And the kind of findings that he made, he doesn't care who appointed him. Where he sees that this is against the state, he says it without fear or favor and actually recommends strict punishment. In fact, on the Public Accounts Committee, before I came to Parliament, when Honorable Ajimamenu was chairman, all the way to now that Honorable Aveji, James Kluge Aveji, is chairman, what used to be the norm was that when people chop government money and the Auditor General finds them out, they go and find receipts and bring it and tell us, oh, this is receipts for the money that we chopped. And the Auditor General is asked to authenticate the receipts, which most times is done, and then the person is let off the hook. When the person fails to authenticate a receipt and appears before the committee, we give you a number of days to go and refund the money, and they do it. Whether they've made interest on that money is all gone. Thanks to Dom Level went to the courts and got the courts to now give the power for surcharge. So starting from the 2017 report, or from the reports that we are considering now, we don't give you the opportunity to refund or to bring, we don't give you the opportunity to bring receipts. Once a finding is made against you, whether you have receipts or not, you pay back. Dom Level's track record. That's one thing people have failed, don't know. But those of us who sit on the Public Accounts Committee, right now, it is, and so when the audit is going on, you realize that everybody is scrambling now. At first, people didn't used to take the auditors seriously. But now we've made it clear, abundantly clear, that when you appear before us, we're asking you to pay. We're not asking you for receipts. We don't want to hear anything, because now we have a court order that has been secured by Dom Level to ensure that the wanton dissipation of state resources is brought to an end. That is his track record. This is the man President Akufo-Addo and his government is fighting.
Are they fighting? They say she go and leave legally. They've quoted several laws.
So between Dom Level, who is working actively and fighting corruption, he is hard working, and the special prosecutor who is hard talking, has the special prosecutor gone on leave?
Perhaps.
Perhaps when? When? One is hard working, one is hard talking. The one who is doing the work, we say he should go and leave. The one who is talking, we say he can stay there and continue talking. Several people who are parts of this government, who are not doing what you expect of their officers. You don't even see them. The president has not realized that those people have to go and leave. You see, and the Danish ambassador summed this up well. She said corruption is fighting Dom Level. And who is fighting him today? That's why I told you this is a battle between the Auditor General and Corruption General.
You think he's gone? You think he's gone?
Oh. You see,
there's a leave he can return when the leave is done.
You see, the government thinks that Dom Level is exposing too much rot. And you just need to pick up the 2017 and 2018 reports. And I mean, the Public Accounts Committee needs to start, we need to get up and doing, because the kinds of rots in those reports, the wanton dissipation of state resources, and 2019 audit is ongoing. It is getting worse. So, Master, step aside so that someone else can come in. Mr. Duajiman, who is the board chair, who gleefully was granting interviews and saying that Dom Level has to go on leave, has he taken his leave? Duajiman, has he taken leave?
No, we are in Parliament. Hope you can take that up.
You understand me? No, but it is not Parliament asking Dom Level to go on leave. It is the president. And you see, and that's what Franklin said when he said, you judge a book by its cover and content. When Mr. Akufo-Addo was seeking this office, he painted himself as an angel of light who abhorred corruption. Now we have read the book he is, and we've seen that he's an angel of darkness.
Just because he said
corruption.
Just because he's following the law.
No, what law? The law in question is being, and you see, the executive secretary to the president, in this his latest response, has shown that he lacks emotional and political intelligence.
Is he required to? He's required to explain the law.
Yes, but in holding a high office as executive secretary to the president, you must have political intelligence and emotional intelligence. If you read the tone of this letter, it is like somebody who is fighting over a girl with another person. It's as though he has a woman beef with Dom Level. The language is unbecoming of the office of executive secretary to the president. And one thing he fails to do in his almost 4-page letter, because it's 4 pages, if you look at the space he took for his signature, it's almost half a page. If you read that letter, one fundamental issue of law that Dom Level raises was not answered in there.
Which is?
The question that, can leave be accumulated? Can leave be accumulated year on year, or does leave expire at the expiration of that calendar year? Asante Bediatu says Dom Levo cannot understand the principles because he's not a lawyer. We thank him. The fact that somebody is not a lawyer does not mean that the person cannot read and act and understand it, and does not mean that the person cannot engage the services of a lawyer to interpret for him. So that argument in itself, that's why I said emotional intelligence is lacking in that letter. But the fundamental principle of law,
wrap up for me,
which somebody like and in Ghana, we all know Ostengame is somebody who, when it comes to our labor laws, has done quite well. Mr. Ostengame has come out and said, you cannot accumulate leave. Your leave expires at the end of that expiration. The expiration
what should have happened was his annual leave for this year. They say take it.
So he should have taken the annual leave for this year. But now you are telling me that the executive secretary, who is a lawyer, who knows all, says that he's accumulating from 2017, 2018, 2019, and added 2020 to it. So he should go 167 days. Look, no matter what they do, and I beg Mr. Domlevo, if he's watching us, where's my camera? Which one is my camera? This one.
Yes, this one.
Mr. Domlevo, I beg you, don't go to court. Don't go to court. You know why. Don't go to court. Just don't go to court. The court of the public opinion, the people of this country, can read between the lines. I beg you, do one last letter. Just one last letter to respond to this, and after that, don't mind them again.
All right, thank you very much, Sam George. Yes, Honorable Senator Champo.
Could you? Where are we taking Ghana to?
You see, he's not be happy.
I listen to all of us. When it suits us, we play a rhetoric that we are building a democracy, and we should do the democracy good by strengthening our institutions. He who knows what is right and do not do it is guilty of not doing the right thing. I respect Mr. Yao Domelevo very, very well, Daniel. I first met him when I had not even entered Parliament on an errand. And I could see the public servant in him, well astute. But one thing we should all appreciate, I'm a member of Parliament of Impressive constituency today. I will not be forever and ever. And as I chart this path, I should chart it with the understanding that one day I will leave this office. I love the work he has done. And like Sam said, the reports he's done that have come to Parliament that we work with. The audit service is a service. It's not Mr. Domelevo. We should all appreciate it. So he will work as a team to achieve an end. Sam in his submission said he thinks that the Public Accounts Committee must up its game. It's not going to be only Sam alone. Such is the way we respect and expect our institutions and our bodies to work. I felt that when he had admitted that this is right, and as a senior public officer, he would find a very decent way. I don't expect him, like I said, to be like me. But this back and forth and expositions, and then impugning reasons why you've been written to, colors the entire exercise. Because why must you go to the extent that I'm taking reports on the senior minister and somebody operates from the senior minister's outfit and bad faith and I'm being targeted? This plays into the arena where we are, and that is partisan politics. And civil servants of this country must learn better. That is the only way we can develop and grow this country. There are several of these kinds. There are people who, when having the opportunity to sit and administer as civil servants, play games as politicians. I'm sure this is not news to you, that we hear that there is this chief director that they suspect him to be NDC, there's this chief director that they suspect him to be MPP, and this is what we do to destroy the fabric of our services. And for me, we need to up the game. This is needless. This battle by Mr. Yao Domelevo is needless. It's not taking Ghana anywhere. It's not helping himself. Look, if I want to read meanings into all the things that is happening, okay, we politicians will say, in the last hours of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, when he was leaving office, he appointed you. So me too, I will say, then you are NDC, that's why he appointed you. Is this right? Should I reason like that? And that's when you, because they appointed you, yes, you can be an activist and promote right doing. If you know right, that's what I said, if you know that you're supposed to take your leave, and you don't take it, and you are an auditor, and part of the work is such that some of the people who works in public and government offices who do not take leaves and stay in and cover up their deeds, you bring it out. So you know the principle of taking leave is critical and crucial. If you don't work in that manner, and I am also auditing you by this conduct, you are talking bad faith to some people elsewhere, then I also talk about bad faith to you. You expose yourself for all manner of attacks. I would have peacefully, he's a very fine public servant. They said, take your leave, go and sit back. Leave it to us. Me and him, when he gives it to me, I'll give it to him. But when you come into that arena, name calling and blaming and saying I'm being targeted and I'm being that, why would somebody target you? What for? What is the reason why you are being targeted? To every action and to its reaction, we should find a way of synchronizing them and getting to see why an action was taken and why a certain reaction came. So if you think you are being targeted, then that's why the action was taken. Then I'm coming back to tell you, and I'm happy he says in deference to the office of the president, we should all understand that the 1992 constitution is for all of us. Nobody is above the law. Once you get the opportunity, display it. Very, 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 very good. But the way he's chatting, I am afraid for him.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable, you have what? You have 30 seconds.
Just a quick one. You see, when he says he's being targeted, it is because of the selective manner in which his issue is being treated. And the Auditor General doesn't audit people on taking leaves or not, or whether they've taken leave or not. And taking leave is at the discretion of the person. Yes, you are entitled to it. How many? Every Minister of State is entitled to a number of days of leave. How many of them take their leave? The President is entitled to a number of days of leave. How many times does he take his leave?
He has taken his leave.
He's done it twice, only twice, since he became president. So should we ask the president also to proceed on leave for 2019 and 2020? Should we also do that demand? You understand me? And so the point is to want to take him out. And yes, we say that he is the institution. The Auditor General is the institution, but an institution takes the character of the leader of the institution. Today we are all talking about the fantastic work the Auditor General's office is doing and his fight against corruption. In the past, before it was him, that was not the impression of the Ghanaian people about that office of the Auditor General. So it comes to the individual who is leading it.
No, wait, I have a point to make.
Okay, please, Professor.
I'm happy some raised the point of the improvement in our public service system. It wasn't built by one person. It wasn't built by Domelevo. I wouldn't ascribe to that. And as far as I've been in government, and as far as been in serving in government as a member of parliament, I know the works that the committee that Sam serves on in previous parliaments have done to strengthen the workings of these people. Once upon a time, the national security minister today was high-handed, and people said he was high-handed because he caused an operative to be put to jail. We wouldn't say he's the best person in life, no. That's why I don't want that to go to form Mr. Malevo. There's history to why we have come to where we have come to.
All right.
And so nobody can ascribe it to one person. No, it is not.
Thank you.
I don't agree to that school of thought.
Franklin, I'm sorry, time is up on this one.
Quickly, just 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Quickly.
I think the office, just like the MPP would like to say that their dear leader, Nana Akufo-Addo, is the only reason why good things are happening to the country. Must also be seen in the same light. Absolutely. Has actually done so much for the institution to the extent that it stands taller. So this attempt to make it look as if Domelevo is just an ordinary hireling of the state is unfortunate. It must be dismissed. It must be dismissed. Just as the honorable MPs have been saying, our dear president, we thank our president for everything he does, even though he's using our taxes.
Franklin, qualify which MPs have been saying that. Not all MPs have been saying that. Some MPs have been saying that.
All right. Point is made on this one. We'll take a quick break.
Frankly, just to go, I am not saying, and I want this impression established, to say that Yao, our senior brother, has done nothing. But his conduct in response to the action is what I am questioning. I can never for a second say he's never done anything in his stewardship for the office he occupies. And that would be a great dishonor and disservice for me. I would never do that.
All right, thank you. Point well made. And we will end the political part of the conversation now. Thank you very much, Samnate George, who is heading back to Nego Pram. He says he's not taking an eye off that process, not even for a second.
Because I need to
checking his phone. He's been checking his phone even as he's here.
Giving me reports.
Getting his reports. Honorable Senator Shampoo as well, as always welcome. When we return, is the COVID conversation. I'll be having that conversation with Nana Kofi Kwache, with the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association as well, Dr. Justice Yankson, and Dr. Gordon Abeka Nkrumah. The big issue returns.
Comprehensive news. The Citi Newsroom at 8 p.m. on Citi TV is your most engaging news bulletin on TV.
It's a very oh, that's too bad. The youth are still throwing stones. Can I come in? I want to come in. Okay.
Telling your stories better with correspondents covering every corner of the country.
Getting access to potable water is a daily struggle for residents of Kakichekopi and Balekopi communities in the Ada East district of the Greater Accra region.
Citi Newsroom at 8 p.m. Very fluent with issues that concern you.
This is quite a cover on Mr. Rabbi. Someone was in a bread. You told you can it's 1 week. What do you say?
Is it unfair? What all this? What all this? We are dying! We are dying! We are dying for Choco!
With Citi Newsroom, your community is now connected.
In this our community, all of us we are very sorry about this school. If we went to see the children, they are so small. Even my grandchildren are there. My grands outside there. If they come out from the school, how would this?
Every day at 8 p.m., Citi Newsroom is live on Citi TV.
Representing a country is no small feat.
Because in Ghana, the love for Israel is so real, People are nursing it from home, from churches, and then you are walking in such a positive atmosphere and all the doors are open for you.
View the lives of the diplomats in Ghana through their very own eyes and see how they make Ghana their home.
I always loved it. I love the remains of African culture in Brazil. I am very interested in the way Africans were able to, amidst those horrible conditions, they were capable of transform their African heritage.
Join me, Apioko Sarah Mashong Abe, on Diplomatic License every Saturday at 5 p.m. only on Citi TV.
About to change your Sunday night for the better.
Prophecy is not for useless things and loose, frivolous things. Prophecy is for weightier matters.
We will bring you the most captivating guests and explore the most amazing stories. Your way to stardom was really planned.
Calculated.
Wow.
I wanted like a specific future for myself. First, I'm gonna gain my popularity. Second, help must come from it. Like upside down like this.
You know it. We will dazzle you with real life situations and examine mind-blowing topics.
Babylon says he can pay me. I want to show him cash. Good one.
So is that what it's about?
Oh yes, I'll prove to this guy. Cash.
Draw your swords. Deuteronomy 8:3. Charge.
Join me, Frema Dunyame.
And me, Ato Kwamna, every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Citi TV. Are you ready?
Upside Down, every Sunday, 7 p.m. only on Citi TV.
Welcome back to the big issue, and now we are discussing the alarming rise in COVID cases and what also looks like a slowdown perhaps in public education and public understanding and public cognizance of the COVID-19 disease. The Ghana Medical Association, if you take a copy of today's daily graphic, you will see them there, large and loud, with a big "We are worried" headline, and they expressed that worry in the course of the week with a 3-page press statement. Other people have also expressed concern. We had the weekly briefing on Thursday where certain issues came up. It looks like reagents are delayed, all kinds of things are happening. And we had some new numbers as well for the COVID that I just wanted to run. Yes, so looks like, and this one came at midnight. These days the numbers come at midnight, they don't come during the day. A total of 19,388 confirmed cases, 14,330. I like to say recoveries and discharges, not recoveries. Am I right, Dr. Jansen, in saying that?
Yes, that is the position.
So 14,330 recoveries and discharges, and sadly 117 deaths. That number will be updated, I'm sure, by the end of the day, because we have some reported cases there. So as at midnight, 758 new cases were added. 758, and significantly, these were even lagged cases, so they are not fresh. Basically, these are coming from outstanding tests and whatnot. So, to help me have this conversation this morning, Nana Kofi Kwachi, epidemiologist, he will join us via Zoom. In studio, Dr. Godfred Akoto Boafo, health economist, and Dr. Justice Yangse. Now, it's interesting that we have Dr. Godfred Akoto Boafo because for those of you who paid attention to the COVID conversation, he's always said that, look, if we ignore certain protocols, the numbers would go up and go up in a certain way. And it looks like the numbers are going up in that way. So perhaps we'll try and get some insight from him. But I want to begin from Dr. Justice Yangse. And Dr. Justice Yangse, a lot of people are saying that the Ghana Medical Association is trying to redeem itself after kowtowing to the government for 2.5 months. Now that the situation is getting out of hand, you are trying to remove yourself from the conversation. They are saying you sat in meetings where the government did what you wanted to do. You didn't speak. Now, cases are going up thousands and you suddenly want to show your consent?
Well, Godfred, people are entitled to their opinions. I'll never begrudge anybody for a position or a view. But, of course, sometimes you also need to look at the facts and probably ask a lot more to see what an organization can do and has done. To start off with, everybody will appreciate the fact that the Ghana Medical Association has been consistent as far as advocacy for the right things to be done when this COVID pandemic is concerned. But our mandate is such that beyond the advocacy, we also need to find ways of lobbying, of dialoguing, and all that to ensure that the advocacy we are doing also is attractive enough, is taken on by the powers that be for the necessary change to happen. Now, we also have a situation where sometimes we need time to assess situations. We are all over the country, and as a credible institution, sometimes before we even come out with certain things, numbers, figures, what have you, we need to cross-check and be sure that we won't put anything out there that will turn out to be false. And you can check the records. I don't remember ever within my life as a GMA General Secretary or a Deputy General Secretary where GMA has put out something that was false. So we have our strengths, which mainly is in our advocacy and our professional activity.
when it comes to the issues of management, especially in this COVID era, it is not led by us. We don't hold the public purse. So, for example, if we need PPEs for our members and we cry about it, we come on radio, we write letters to the powers that be, we attend meetings, we give the necessary advice, and the procurement doesn't happen. You cannot blame us. The ultimate will be that one of these days we will all say that, okay, we are tired, we are not going to work. And I'm sure the people of Ghana might not be too happy, especially within this era of COVID. So we will continue to do the advocacy. Anybody who has concrete suggestions, our doors are also open. Our jobs are also not about COVID only. There are also other health problems around that we need to attend to. Before the onset of COVID, the health problems were with us. There were other things we needed to do. We are doing our best. Look, as we speak, we have partnered the private sector. And we are working on ensuring that we get 4 infectious disease treatment centers in the country. I spent a lot of my time at the Gai East site, where the first one, the 100-bed capacity facility with a 21-bed ICU is being put up. It was through our inputs to that private sector fund that we all agreed that as a country, we need an infectious disease center. It is so appalling that for our 60 years plus post-independence, we can't even boast of one infectious disease center. And in a pandemic like this, we are all seeing why we are struggling. It is because we are ill-prepared. So I think that people should not think that the GNA has the magic wand to solve all the problems, especially where we don't control the pest. We'll continue to advocate, we'll continue to collaborate and ensure that the right things are done.
But were you invited to the party?
You see, the truth is that one, we don't have access to the first gentleman of the land on daily basis. As and when we have access to him, we give him the necessary advice. He has advisors. There's a national COVID coordination team headed by a former Deputy Director General of the WHO.
Are you members?
We are not members of that team.
There is no GMA member on that board?
You see, there are doctors in their personal and professional capacity, but not as GMA representatives.
Okay, so you are not at the party?
We are not. We get the opportunity to sit with them, table the issues, discuss with them, and then they also sometimes will carry it on to the national level proper. At such meetings, we are not there. It is only when we are invited on a particular issue that we can get the opportunity to be there. So where the final decisions are being taken, we are just relying on the advocacy we've done, the lobbying we've done, and in quotes, the professionalism of our members who, per their appointments, happen to be there. But when the state takes decisions, those ones cannot be brought to our tables that look, GMA take the decisions for us. We'll continue to push. We wish we had the power to take all the decisions relating to COVID. And I'm sure it would have been different from what we are seeing now.
I will get to Dr. Becca and Nkrumah and Akufi in a bit. Let me just, please allow me a few more minutes with Dr. Yankson. You issued a statement and complained about PPEs. What is the problem? Because this has been an issue since April. The government says it has put in place measures for PPEs. We are making some here. In fact, we realized that certain factories were simply put on a 24-hour shift to make PPEs. Thousands and thousands have been donated to various hospitals in this medical facilities in this country. Why are you running out of PPEs so quickly?
Well, the issue is this. The issue of PPEs has to do with quantities and quality, or appropriateness.
Okay.
You can supply a set of PPEs today, but if they are not appropriate for a particular activity, technically speaking, we don't have. There are different bits we describe as PPEs. So a mask is one, a surgical mask, for example, N95, a disposable gown, a face shield, a private overall suit. If I need a private overall suit to attend to a patient who has COVID and on admission, and I don't have it, I cannot go in there. So we'll tell you that, yes, you think you may have supplied something, but indeed you have not supplied in terms of the appropriateness and the right quantities as well.
Are you not consulted on the design? Why is there an appropriateness issue?
Well, and these are some of the issues. These are some of the issues. Because the procurement process, we are not part of the procurement process. They will not recognize your presence on that procurement committee to advise them. They will tell you that they have their own experts and technocrats. As to how that is done, we cannot. But we believe that for us on the ground, who know the problems, we should be part of some of these activities. The other bit about the PPE is that most of them are single-use items. So if, for example, today you bring a pack of 1,000, depending on the level of the facility, for a place as big as Kolebu, 1,000 is nothing at all in the scheme of things. It is chicken feed, because on a day, depending on the level of the activity, you can consume all 1,000. Or assuming you even use, say, even 20% today. So for the week, you use 20% of the 1,000, 200, 200, 200. After the fifth day, it's gone. Meanwhile, potentially, the next supply that may come the way of Kolebu could be in 2 months' time. It could be 3 weeks. It could be a month away. So the issue of the supply chain itself has some challenges that will have to be addressed. There are situations where you will hear that there are shortage of PPEs. You contact the managers and they will tell you that, oh, we have PPEs. You go on the ground, you don't find. Then you can't tell who is really telling you the truth. But for us, the reality is what we see on the ground.
That there is a shortage of PPEs?
Yes. And nobody can discount that.
So when they say call, when you have issues, call the 311. Have you been calling the 311?
You see, these are some of the things that, with all due respect, doesn't even help the cause. When I have a patient in front of me, I need a PPE to sort that patient out. I have to call 311 before somebody sitting in an administrative center somewhere would decide that, okay, I'm going to bring you. What kind of system is that? Yes, these lines are there for people to make the right calls, but they shouldn't be the preserve of the individual daughter to be making those calls. That is why we have facility managers. They should make those calls and ensure that I have the PPEs on in my theater or in my consulting room or wherever I may find myself, be it an emergency room or wherever. But now if you tell me that as and when I don't have PPE, I should call. And you see, the thing is that if you work in a big institution, the protocols within the institution are such that you as a doctor in a particular department, you might not even know the stocks at the stores or what has been procured and when it will be supplied. But for us, the key thing is that people should understand that there should be really availability and supply of the appropriate PPEs for our use. Okay. That is all we are calling for.
All right, I'll come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Abeka Nkrumah. Dr. Abeka Nkrumah, so we have the new numbers, and I'm sure you've been running your computer and your models over the past month, looking at the increased rate of positivity in our system. You have been concerned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akoto. To disappoint you, I think that at a point in time, I just got fed up and I thought that to what extent? Because you keep on running these things, you say it looks like it's business as usual. So, of course, I keep on looking at the numbers, and like I told you earlier on, I think that I told you that those things that they kept on telling us, I didn't take it because I wasn't interested in the cumulative positivity rate. I was just interested in the marginal positivity rate. That is like every sample which comes, what proportion of it is actually positive. And you remember I showed you those graphs telling you that even though they said at a point that we had reached our peak, and I told you that it wasn't true because the marginal positivity rate was going up. And because the marginal positivity rate is going up, what it tells me is that the number of people who will now be exposed to the virus will increase, and we are going to have a lot of community infections. And I think the next time you also spoke to me, then I talked about the fact that we need to be very careful with our opening and make sure that the things that we are using as benchmarks to open, i.e. that the labs are well equipped, PPEs are there, education is, we need to make sure we have it right, because at that point I told you that I didn't think that we had it, but I was challenged. But I think that the result now tells it all, that we actually didn't have it. Of course, now you can see that the numbers are even escalating, because at that point we were having the releases over a week or two. Now we are having the releases every other day. And if you are having 700, okay, in the space of about 2 days, it tells you that the community spread is extensive. And now I can say that it is difficult to even do any modeling, because things are kind of out of hand.
Really?
I mean, how am I going to do the modeling? Because, for instance, if I do the modeling, I'm doing the modeling taking into consideration the effectiveness of the restrictions. But right now, nobody knows to what extent those restrictions are effective. So any number that I generate, the margin of error is going to be a bit big. And so that's the reason why I've decided that it's not too good for my time. What we've got to concentrate on right now is what do we need to do to be able to bring some level of, if you like, control to what is happening.
But what we need to do has always been clear, has it not?
I mean, I was yesterday, I was just looking at, WHO has a pandemic preparedness framework, okay, from different levels. They have the stage 1, the stage 2, the stage 3. So from 1 to 3 is at the time where you don't have significant human-to-human transmission. It's basically animal to animal and a few animal-to-human transmission. Then you have 4, and then you have 5 and 6, which is where you have significant human-to-human transmission. I mean, I've looked through that list, okay, and then the CDC also has its own framework. I've looked at that. We have done almost everything that is prescribed by this framework. The issue is what we have done. Is it working? Did we do it the right way? Did we start from the right premise? Those, I think, are the key questions that we've got to answer. Because at this point, whether you do calculations or not, I mean, the calculations is not going to stop the spread. So our focus right now, that's why I've said that I've stopped the modeling. The focus right now is looking at the framework. What are the sort of things that we need to do? See, they talk about the issue of preparedness. Now, preparedness, we've passed it. When we locked down, that was the time we're supposed to be preparing. So that window of opportunity is gone. We don't have it. Then they talk about the issue of logistics, okay, to make sure that you activate your supply chain in such a way that you'll be able to get, 1, the PPEs, 2, you'll be able to get medication for those who are in hospitals. Fact of the matter is that that opportunity is also gone. Because the point is that if we had to do that, we had to create that internally. Because right now that we have borders locked, our ability to get certain items is restricted. I mean, just recently, I think over 2 or 3 days ago, we heard that the U.S. has bought all the stocks of remdesivir. Okay, yeah. So if you needed it, where are you going to get it from? So the time we needed to get all those things put together, it's gone. And you remember it was on this same seat that I told you that the reason for lockdown, because lockdown is not an end in itself. I told you here that it is only to buy us time, because lockdown don't do anything. And the last time, remember when I showed you the Oxford modeling, I told you that when you look at the transmission effect, okay, of the different non-pharmaceutical interventions on the R0, lockdown is the one which transmits the least effect. So lockdown is only to be able to give you time to be able to do these sort of things. Then the other thing that you need to do is communication. And that is where I think we still have some leverage to be able to rework the communication. Our communication, I don't think, has been what it should be. I mean, I could be challenged from the public health people, but from where I sit, I think that COVID is not something extraordinary. Okay, and he's a medical doctor, he probably may disagree with me. But COVID is only an infectious disease which has no cure. And so the standard way of dealing with COVID is your public health system. In other words, your primary healthcare system. If your primary healthcare system is very robust, it should be able to deal with this. It shouldn't be something which starts from the top. I would have thought that this is something which should have used a bottom-up approach so that all the communication and everything would have been managed at the district level, the sub-district level, with the chiefs and with the opinion leaders, okay? Because when it comes to managing a pandemic, the greatest issue that you need to manage is trust. If you can't manage trust, you will lose it. Because you see, when you give information to people, that information should resonate with the people. The people should trust the people who are giving the information so that they will act. Because every intervention you put in place is about behavior change. And people will only change their behavior if they trust what you are putting out. So for me, that is one area that we can look at. Of course, we can also look at human resources, which for me is currently a great issue, because now one of the challenges that I have right now is that if we are not careful, the resource reallocation that we are doing may even cause more debt arising from non-COVID than the COVID itself. Because right now, if you go to a couple of facilities, maybe he will give us the figures, what we see is that resources are being reallocated. So some surgeries are even being put on the on the
we heard that from Kolebu.
Okay, so let me give you a typical example. Let's say he, a medical doctor, he diagnoses somebody having maybe early onset of, let's say, cancer, but he's not sure, so he wants to do some surgery, okay, to be sure. That surgery would be described as a non-emergency surgery, and so it will be put at the burner. But every one of us know that with cancer, every day, okay, can be crucial. So we can relook at our human resources as well. Then we can then also look at the issues of the PPEs. So for me, these are the things that we need to begin to look at and discuss in terms of how are we going to recalibrate our plans around communication, around our supply chain, around human resources to be able to make a change, if any, and then finally the politics.
Okay, all right. Let me get onto Zoom. I'll come back to Dr. Jansen in a bit. Nana Kofi, good morning.
Good morning, Godfred. Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you. And Dr. Beka stopped his modeling, but you didn't. Almost every single day you've been putting your numbers out there on social media. And even before the numbers got out of hand, I recall a tweet where you said that you don't want to be proven right because you were very worried by the numbers and the interpretation you had put on the numbers. How do we go forward from here? Because the numbers do tell a story that we perhaps are not in charge as much as we think we are.
Well, good morning to Dr. Jansen. Pleasure to meet you. To Gordon and Franklin, good to see you again. We should catch up after this. I think especially what Gordon just said with respect to the trajectory we are on, I think it's good that we are coming to terms with what we are really looking at, but it's a tragedy that it took us this long. The reality is that when we look at public health data for an epidemic like this, we know that things happen in sequence. We know that what leads to deaths is high rates of hospitalization. What leads to high rates of hospitalization is high rates of infection. And what leads to high rates of infection is ineffective physical distancing and other broad public interventions. We saw the first thing in that chain happening as early as April. When the lockdown was being lifted, the general consensus among the public health community was that we did not have the data to make the decision that we had accomplished the goals of the lockdown in terms of buying ourselves sufficient time and in terms of also slowing down the rate of transmission to a point where we knew that the epidemic was growing at a rate that was manageable. These are not things that people are just saying now. These are things people have been saying since April. And it's unfortunate that in the midst of that conversation, a lot of it has been, political, it's been PR, because the costs of it are real. The costs of it are inevitable if you allow the sequence of events to go unchecked. And that's where we find ourselves now. I really do empathize with Dr. Yankton and the folks at GMA in their positions as well. We are in a situation now, like Gordon said, where, if you look at countries like the United States, France, Italy, they all had to do some amount of rationing of care because A, they didn't have enough beds or enough people or personnel available. And that was complicated by the fact that so many of their healthcare personnel then got infected and were out of the workforce. We knew that the immediate solution to that was to expand access to isolation centers, but to also make sure that the healthcare workers actually had PPE. And when we saw pictures of what was being produced as far back as during the lockdown, it was clear that what we were looking at in some of the pictures were fabric masks that were not going to be suitable to the purposes of managing an infectious disease like COVID-19. These are not things that are just being said this week. They're not things that are just being said even in the last couple of weeks. They've been things that have been said since April, since March. We find ourselves in a position now where we are dealing with the consequences of it. But even if you look at the data as to whether or not we have an accurate grasp of the scale of our crisis, that's also a very big question mark. I say that because, like Gordon pointed out, the test positivity rate has been trending. If we actually are going to play this, let's look at other countries and we are doing so well and all that, our test positivity rate on a daily basis is actually one of the worst in the world. We have a test positivity rate that ranks in the top 20 highest in the world on most days when our data comes out. Right now, we're averaging 13.43%, when the WHO's threshold for concern is 5%. And even there, again, it goes back to the way, like we've been talking about how things have been communicated. We've been using this cumulative test positivity rate, which means absolutely nothing in the practical sense in managing an epidemic, because the variable we are interested in is the daily rate and how it changes. When the daily rate, or let's say the 7-day average of daily rates started telling us that we were going to be above that 5% threshold, or we're heading to that dangerous position, it was on May 8th. That was the first time we crossed that threshold. That was a 7-day average. But we're using a cumulative average, and we didn't reach that threshold until June 1st. If you look at the time that's wasted in there, where we could have been ramping up some of our measures, reconsidering some of the reopenings, reconsidering some of the easing of restrictions, all that time is wasted time. And
but before you go on, Nanago, before you go on, how did we miss that though? Considering the people who are looking at this, how do we miss something like that? May 8th and June 1st.
The reality, Gordon and I have had conversations offline about this several times, and I've had conversations like this with many of my other public health colleagues here in Ghana and outside, and my home institution at NYU. And this has been one of the more baffling things, the fact that we keep putting out this statistic. We know that no country, I really have not seen other countries use this cumulative statistic for anything apart from describing a general state of affairs, not actually as management data in terms of what you're supposed to respond to. So I don't think I'm the right person to be asking the question about how we missed it. But I don't think that, what I'm saying is exactly what Gordon is saying. When we are both saying what we've been saying since April. So this is not stuff that if we were really, it's baffling, to be frank. I really do understand. I was actually working on a thread about this to try and understand how we could have made those mistakes and how we're not responding to data. But, like Gordon said, if you look through the list of things that we are supposed to be doing, the question in an epidemic is not what you do. It's about when you do it and how you do it. Just treating it like a checklist and saying, oh, the international community says we are testing more than anybody else, or, we are doing pool testing. And, I was interviewed on BBC where I pointed out that the pool testing is a great solution. We can't tout that as some innovation that's going to solve our problems, because simultaneous to that, you have to be working to make sure you have reagents available. You're expanding your lab capacity. Those things haven't happened. And now we find ourselves in a situation where on the day we receive, the highest, the record number of single-day cases, 758, over half of them are from 2 weeks ago. If you're using our current discharge protocol, it would mean that most of those cases would have been technically they have gone through the management phase entirely. But what about their contacts who were never traced during the time where if they were asymptomatic, now they are considered discharged. What about their contacts? And what about the contacts of those contacts? That's what we're going to be picking up in routine surveillance. And that's what we're picking up, in those numbers where in June alone, we reported almost 4,000 cases just in routine surveillance. I mean, that's people walking to hospital as suspected cases and testing positive. We ought to really be having a frank, candid conversation as a country. Let's put the politics aside. Let's put the PR aside. Let's put the spin aside. And let's be honest with ourselves that we cannot continue with just saying wash your hand and wear your face mask. Are we even measuring those things? Do we have a sense of what proportion of people are complying? Because if we don't, and we're just expecting that to translate somehow into a miraculous end of the epidemic, we are going to get it wrong. And we need to really have a frank conversation about that as a country.
All right, thank you, Nana Kofi. I'll get back to you. Let me go to Dr. Yancey. And I want to ask you a straight-up question on this one. How concerned should we be? Nana Kofi talks about in the past month, you have 4,000 people coming through via routine surveillance. You work in a hospital on a day-to-day. Are people just trooping in like that with these numbers? Should we be concerned?
The straight answer is we should be very, very much concerned. The situation is alarming. We need to hit the nail.
We don't hear that tone when the government speaks. On Thursday, we didn't hear that tone from the GHS boss.
Well, I don't know what the situation is by way of their considerations. But as far as we are concerned, the situation is alarming. Look, Nana gave some of the figures. The key thing, like he said, is the daily infection rate. But sometimes, even when you work the numbers, you can do your rough averages and you see where we are heading to. I quite remember we started April with about 2,000 cases. I think specifically maybe 2,040 cases. Mm-hmm. Then we started May. We started May with 2,040. Then we started June with 8,000 and I think 70 or so. Mm-hmm. Look at the difference from June to July. Right. We are starting July with, technically speaking, 20,000. If you do the averages, then you begin to see that clearly our numbers are going up. And what that daily rises we are seeing means is that there's significant community spread. Now, at the hospital end, we're also beginning to see a lot more symptomatic patients than we were seeing previously. Mm. We are also beginning to see a lot more people who are in the moderate, severe, critically ill group. Now, the severe, critically ill group is where a lot of times you have a lot of your casualties. And if you look at our figures on the death side, you realize that for the month of June, we just moved about 300% or something like that. So clearly, we are at a point where we are beginning to have problems. Most facilities have very limited capacity to handle the severe to critical cases.
Really?
Yes. Because for those severe to critical cases, you would need proper resources, both human and logistics. How many intensivists do we have as a country? There are a lot of regions in Ghana who don't have a single intensivist. You need places like ICUs. Mm-hmm. Or well-functional backups like CT scans, dialysis machines, what have you. People are coming in with acute kidney injury, basically acute kidney failure, arising out of COVID. We need to put them on dialysis. Beyond Kolebu and a few places in Accra, once you get out of Accra, most places they don't have. The basic medications that we need in handling these patients, a lot of times we have shortages in the system, or they are basically non-available.
How is that possible?
Only God can tell, because I mean, this is a country.
How is that possible?
Yes, because this is a country that, as far as we are concerned, our leaders have told us how much they have had by way of inflows from the World Banks, the IMFs, and what have you, that is aimed at fighting COVID. So if the clinical facilities that need these resources are not getting them, we cannot explain. Our position is that, yes, there could be some difficulties because we find ourselves in a pandemic situation. But we should still be able to do more than we are doing now. It is so clear. Look, now I was talking about testing capacity. One thing people don't even know, or people haven't probably averted their minds to, is that the high numbers of cases we are getting now, we are doing it at a point where we are testing less than we were doing previously. The Director General Ghana Health Service has told all of us that we've run out of test kits, reagents, and all the bits. We are expecting some in the coming weeks.
Yes, that's from China.
Yes. So ask yourself, what are we doing within this period? If you don't have the basic tools to do the testing, how many can you test? And even with the little you are testing, look at the positivity rates we are returning. The unfortunate bit about this situation is that what it means that there are a large chunk of people out there who ought to be tested for their position to be known in terms of whether you are positive or negative.
But we've been told mass testing is not on the table.
It is not about mass testing. We have significant community spread going on, and you are not testing. The admonition from the WHO is test, 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 test. Now we do tests, we can't do the test, the rest. So you are testing very few people. Apart from the fact that you are testing few people, these few people that you are, a small percentage, this small percentage, it takes you sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes a week before you can get results. You update us and you tell us that half of the figures are from 2 weeks back. Within that period, these people, where were they? Were they in our treatment centers? Were they at home? Were they working on the streets like all others? As they walk around, they spread the disease the more. So we keep compounding our problems by not fixing the first pothole that we find on the road. If you haven't fixed your testing capacity, we were promised that all over the country we're going to have various facilities that will be added, we're going to ramp up and all that. What do we see? We are basically saddled with Norwegian and cases here.
Still?
Basically, yes. That's what it is. Yes. You've done Kolebu, you've done VSD and all that. How much are they doing now? What are they adding to the pool in terms of the reports that are coming out? There are sections of the country where no testing capacity exists at all. Central region, for example, cannot test anybody. By now, if we were ramping up properly, we should have gotten to a situation where at least every region could have a testing center. If we were to procure more PCR machines from 13th March or 12th March to date, look, in as much as there are shortages within the system, generally, globally, we will still be able to pick bits and pieces from different places using our ambassadors and our representatives elsewhere, 2, 5, 10, and by now probably we could have had 100 or even 1,000. In terms of human resource, luckily for the testing, Oguchi has enough capacity by way of the human resource. We also have laboratory professionals who have been trained to an extent. All they will need is a bit of top up in terms of how to handle these PCR machines and all that for those who don't have the capacity to use these things because they have never been exposed to in terms of the daily work at their workplaces. Because hitherto it's been confined to the research station. But because we have a base of professionals who can quickly be upskilled, we could have done all these things within this period, and all the centers probably will have the right caliber of personnel as well to be running the test for us. We still haven't been able to sort issues relating to the rapid diagnostic test.
Yes, what is happening with that? That's my next question.
If we had been able to solve that situation, what would have happened is that we could have used that as a screening tool. So let's say if all of us in this room, we think there's something, we can do the quick one and then per the rules. Those who will test positive will then be moved on to do the PCR confirmation. The only problem with that approach is that if the calibration and all that is not properly done, and you have a lot of false negatives, then you begin to have problems. What it means is that for those false negatives, technically speaking, they are positive, but the rapid diagnosis said they were negative. If you leave them and they are just on their own, they will be spreading the disease. But for false positives, there's at least a buffer in there because they will still go through the PCR. So the issue of the false negative becomes one that we need to deal with. I know the FDA has done some work with some of the people who have brought these things around, including the one that was manufactured here in Ghana, Kumasi.
Yeah.
But I don't speak for the FDA, so I can't put all details out. But the little I know is that there's still some further work being done between the manufacturers and FDA to
this is the verification. And that was an initial record when it happened during our COVID discussions. They said it was going to be expedited, but in these circumstances, expedited means something else. Expedited means maybe from 2 years to 8 months. Under those circumstances, not 2 or 3 days. So we know that. Quickly before I go back to Dr. Abeka Nkrumah, your association has also expressed this concern with the current voter registration exercise. And you say you are going to blame the EC if the numbers shoot up. They are saying you can't blame them anyway. But when you look at what is going on, and I'm sure you've had your team drive around, I've seen photos of you going on inspection as well. How concerned are you by what you've witnessed across the country?
Well, let me put it this way. Our position as far as this registration is concerned is that the EC has a constitutional mandate to perform. The Supreme Court, per their last ruling, has also more or less reinforced that position. They have their blessing and they are doing their constitutional duty. We are not opposed to that at all in terms of executing their constitutional duty. Our issue is this. In this era of a pandemic, if you undertake an exercise, whether you're a state institution or you're an individual, you should ensure that that exercise ultimately does not result in an escalation of the case count. So we have basically invoked the principle of ultimate responsibility, and that the EC, having been clothed with the power to do this, having been given the resources, and they themselves, through the chairperson, having come out publicly to outline the sort of things they want to do to prevent infections, we expect that same will be seen on the ground.
Have you seen same?
But unfortunately, especially on the first, second days, most of the places we visited countrywide, the results were far different from what the pronouncements were. What it means is that the implementation of these safety protocols is a problem at the facilities. At the registration centers. Basically, we have said 3 things. That one, on the individual level, you have a responsibility to take good care of yourself, obey and adhere to all the preventive measures. But of course, as human as we are, and seeing what we are seeing, we also expect the state itself, and here, especially the Ghana Police Service, to be out there enforcing these provisions that we have all outlined as part of our COVID treatment plan or management plan. We have executive instrument that spells out punishments and what have you. If the law enforcement agencies or the state itself does not also enforce these provisions, then basically we are not doing ourselves any good. Then the EC itself, that is organizing and has a responsibility to ensure that all of us who come within that space, because of their call to us to come and do this, also provide us with the right safety guarantees. So if the EC cannot collaborate well with the law enforcement agencies, for example, they cannot do enough education for who be registrants to also do what is right, then if there are any problems at those facilities where they are doing their registration, that ultimately results in a wanton disregard for the safety protocols and then subsequently a surge in our infections, then we believe that they are the body that should be held accountable and responsible for that particular bit. And any provisions within the Act that we think as a state can be invoked, we think that it should be directed at the current management of the EC. We are not against their persons, we are not against the institutions, we just want the right things done within this pandemic period that we have all decided to undertake this exercise.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Justice. Let me take some messages. I have questions in there, so any of my guests can answer it. Chooks from Mateko says, I need clarification on this. Why exactly are the recovery figures added to the discharge figures as one? From understanding, the fact that a COVID-19 case has been discharged does not necessarily mean one has recovered. Is the assumption that those discharged will ultimately recover? If so, is there data to verify this? Why not add the discharges to the active cases so we know how many people have actually recovered? And Kofi, I think I've seen or heard you raise this issue. Can you quickly provide a clarification for Chooks?
Well, obviously, it's the reason why there's been some consternation about mixing these two up is because the variables actually have different meanings. And we have not at the beginning of our epidemic, we used, a negative PCR test as a basis for saying someone had recovered. That is the seal-proof way of knowing that someone, A, doesn't have any more virus in their body, and B, cannot therefore pass it on. But people who have recovered in that definition still need, subsequent treatment. But we're using the recoveries definition at that time to make a point about people who are under active case management for the immediate COVID infection. Now, the discharges expands that more to people who are no longer in need of immediate care based on, kind of resolution of symptoms. So that number generally is going to be bigger. It means that people in that group might still be definitely, like a good number of them definitely still have active COVID-19 infections. The idea is that based on probabilities and previous studies that they have a very low likelihood of being infectious to other people. So I think it's important that gets explained so we can draw the different principles, because even among the people who have been discharged, the Ghana Health Service own criteria says many of them will still be getting, or they should all be getting at least 2 follow-ups and should be coming back for care if they develop, if the symptoms resurge. So I do understand the argument. I mean, I've made the argument there about separating out the two, and I do think it makes a lot of sense.
All right, thank you. Also coming through says, government has run out of logistics for coronavirus testing. And this he puts in quotes. So testing has reduced. The president must address the nation to declare a state of emergency immediately, suspend the registration, close down immediately all schools, and reimpose restrictions, not a lockdown. And Dr. Becker, we heard the information minister say on Thursday that all options are still on the table. There are those who have suggested that if you look at other countries, for instance, there are still significant levels of localized lockdowns ongoing, even though they are also phasing and easing restrictions. But as soon as a situation pops its head, we've had the experience of Germany recently. Leicester has locked itself down. We had Beijing 2 weeks ago when the Shanghai Dai situation happened. Is that an option that perhaps we should look at looking at? For a place like Greater Accra, for instance, people have asked, what will it take, for instance, to close down Greater Accra again? Looking at the fact that it accounts for, 60% of the numbers?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that for me, these are more like comparing apples to oranges. So if you look at the case in Germany, it's a specific factory, okay? And so you can say that you're locking that factory down. But in Ghana, our situation right now, I wouldn't say it's localized. Even though Greater Accra seems to have a lot of cases, it may well be, sometimes you see, when people make it seem as if there is more infection in Greater Accra. We don't know. It may well be that by the sheer nature of the facilities in Greater Accra, they have access to testing sites better than the others. And so we tend to get a lot more of our samples into the testing. Again, have we also been able to look at the extent to which people in other places are reporting? Because right now, you can see that the contact tracing is reduced. Most of the cases that are coming, they are coming through the routine surveillance, okay? And you would imagine that because we have multiplicity of facilities in Greater Accra, and we have a lot more educated people in Greater Accra, and they live in communities where through community networks, they may push them to go and test. That is probably the reason why they are testing a lot more. So I will not talk about a lockdown, and in any case, based on the Oxford study, I don't think that lockdown does much. And remember, I said that we ought to be very, very careful. At the time that we were trying to bring the universities in, bring the JSS, and then bring the SSS, I said that that is not the way you do it. If you want to do it, just do one. and then study how it works out. But right now we've put all of them there. If we want to do anything, my point would be maybe bring them back, because I've asked myself, what is the point? The argument some people have made is that if these kids didn't go to school, then there will be loss of human capital accumulation. But the effect of human capital accumulation on growth is over a long period of time. And my argument is that over that long trajectory, we could use technology to actually reverse the losses that we would have made. And so for me, it wasn't that urgent. But for a lockdown, I don't think so. For me, what we need to do right now, because if you lock down right now, and remember I said that a lockdown has a high economic gradient, and you cannot sustain it. Because if you lock down and they come out like we're seeing in the US, the curve will go again. Okay. The greatest problem right now is communication. Because look,
but the government says they are communicating.
They are not. Because the point is that if you are communicating, we must see the effect in the outcomes. So that is the way I look at it. People talk about sending the law enforcement agencies to enforce. Look, how many police people do we have in the country? Where are they going to enforce? You can only enforce it if, for instance, they come to, let's say, Mokola. But when they are in their vicinity, okay, and they are not abiding by the social distancing protocol, where will be the police to enforce? I think that we need to begin to look at this in such a way that we can begin to communicate in a way that resonates and people trust. I was just reading an article from the MIT Technology Review last night, and one of the authors that I read said that the single most significant trend that you find across all the Asian countries that have been able to manage this pandemic is, one, robust and competent public institutions. Two, making sure that public health policy go ahead of politics and not the other way around. And three, transparent, reliable communication delivered in a way that resonated with people.
All right. Let me quickly.
But just a quick one. You see, no, the issue of the lockdowns, I don't think those who are advocating or calling for lockdowns are actually referring to the kind of lockdown we had where you have a complete region. They are talking about localized ones. And that was the example he sought to give you. Like even the Germany one, the factory, you can consider it as a localized activity. We know the hotspots within the system. So for example, if we say that America area, or let's say even in and around Citi FM is a hotspot, we can just lock that bit down, go in, test them. You see, the lockdown affords you the opportunity to do certain things. So, for example, you go in, you ensure that you test everybody in there with proper, in quotes, test results return time. So you do it by the next day, the results are available. You do all those who at that particular moment have the condition. You pick them up. If it's an isolation center or a treatment center, you send them there. You give them the right treatment and they are done. Once you've taken that group away, what it means is that tentatively you have reduced the potential spread within that community. These are the sort of targeted things that we should be doing by way of lockdowns.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. And just to wrap up, coming in, I'm just looking on our news channels, and authorities at the KCCR say they want some of the equipment used in testing to be replaced. And they say they have run down due to the stress that they have been put through. And this is the director of the center, Professor Richard Odame Phillips, who is speaking. He's just been speaking to Citi News this afternoon. They were presented with some PPEs, and he's saying that, well, that is the problem they are facing. They need some of the equipment replaced. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. You can listen to Citi News at 12 for that update.
Godfred, this is not strange.
30 seconds.
This business of testing is a big one for us. Look, the facilities where the testing is supposed to happen, when you go there, they have their own problems, which technically speaking are not being addressed. And now the official management of the place are beginning to talk. Well, this measures you hear when people have pushed so much and there's no result, and they can see that they are collapsing. But one bit about the testing that is very worrying for us as medics is this. When you have a patient that you suspect to have COVID-19, in the health facility. The protocol is that you quickly get in touch, samples are taken, and then
they test.
The test is done, you are waiting results. This patient, ideally, is not supposed to go home. We are holding this patient. It will take you 14 days, 21 days, 7 days before you get the result. Within that period, two things will happen. Care for that person is either compromised, because of course we don't have PPEs and all that, or you have a lot of the healthcare workers being exposed. The patients on the ward, assuming the patient was found on the ward. Sometimes you can come here and say your hypertension or diabetes or malaria or whatever, you were on the ward. By the second or third day, based on what is happening, the medics believe that we need to go and test.
Your point is clear.
And one last thing, health professionals are also not being tested.
Okay, we'll get you on that before you even leave, don't worry. Thank you very much. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Big Issue. And like I said, we dealt with two very big ones. Thank you very much, Dr. Gordon Abeka and Nkrumah, for finding time to spend with us this morning. Nana Kofi Kwache as well, PhD, NYU. Thank you very much for joining us. And Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa as well. Have a good weekend.